Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If you can come on in and find your seat, there are several seats up here at the front. So those of you standing in the back, you want to make your way up to the front, and then there are various seats mixed in the center of the room. So come on in so we can get started. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's good to see you. And as Eugene mentioned, there's a few more tables up front, the ones of which no one wants to sit at. But if you'd rather not stand, they're here for you. Matt Clark, I'm with Technical Services, and happy to welcome you to the fourth NCDOT Pre-Construction Workshop. I'm glad that you're here today. As you notice, there's a full house, over 700 that have registered, and expecting to see most of that number here today. So looking forward to it, to the activities that we have today and tomorrow. I want to thank you for being willing to be here. And as you see, this is not a conference, but it's a workshop. And we're hoping that you can engage, especially during the breakout sessions tomorrow. Our goal is that the topics that we have are applicable to you, and that you can put them into practice the day after you leave. So that's been a focus of ours as we developed the agenda. We hope that it's a time for you to collaborate, to meet new people. It's so rare that as across the state we can actually get together in one event at the same time. So I'm hopeful that we can take advantage of this today. A few safety items just for everyone to be mindful of. Take note of the fire exits. In case of emergency, there's all around. Notice the fire extinguishers, fire alarm pools. If there is a medical incident, just be mindful to identify people to take the lead, clear some space. Also, I'll mention that there is an AED in the facility. As you enter the front doors to the office on the left, if that's needed, identify someone to secure that. And then if emergency personnel are needed, identify someone to usher them into the building as to where the need is. Today, in the general session, and then tomorrow in room 6, we're going to be using the Slido app. And it'll be a way for us to take questions, for us to engage and interact with each other. And we actually have a slide that we're going to put up with a QR code to allow you to access it with icebreaker questions. So we'll move to that, and feel free to take your phones out. Not that you don't already have them out, it's just not visible. So here's our icebreaker question. Of course, not very serious, but something just to get us going. If money was no object, which would you rather be doing right now? And if you can't answer truly to any of these, come see me after the general session. I'd like to get to know you better. Let's see what some of our results are. Okay, great. Thank you. And keep that handy. We'll be using it. And even as we go through the sessions this afternoon, it'll be a way that you can ask questions of those who have spoken and presented for us. I want to thank those of you. Some of you are here for the division and DOT staff being involved in SPSF activities that we had this morning. I want to give you just a brief update on the SPSF policy and procedures. So many of you are aware that the legislature passed a law last year to allow NCDOT to advertise professional services contracts, to procure that and limit it to those firms that are SPSF, limit it to the firms being involved as a prime as a SPSF. So that's something that DOT is working toward, actually in the approval process now. So hopeful in the next few weeks that we'll see that finalized and made available. And there's already conversations with the chief engineer's office and with others as to how to use this policy, this procedure to ensure that NCDOT is helping small professional services firms grow, to have opportunities to do meaningful work as we all work together to deliver the transportation program, the many needs that we have in the state. So if you have more questions, connect with me. I'll share some of that, but I'm hopeful that in just a few weeks we'll be providing some more information on that. If you do have any input as to the types of contracts and what you think would be beneficial, especially if you work with an SPSF firm, please let us know in technical services. That'll be helpful information for us. Today, we're mainly going to be in this room, but during our breaks, especially during the main break, I want to point your attention to this corner of the building. That is where the disciplines, the business units have tables set up. Please go through, chat with them, connect with them, interact with them. You know, another reason to be in there, that is where our snacks and desserts are going to be. So, you know, we're unashamedly going to push you through that room so you can connect with folks. But that is there. So take a reminder of that. There's over 20 disciplines represented in that room. I want to thank a few people, and then we're going to hear from a few others. But the workshop will not be happening without the assistance of ITRI. And I especially want to thank Eugene Murray and Kate Davison. Thank you for all the work that they've done. And most importantly, we would not be sitting here today without the months of work that Terry Canales has put into this. So thank you, Terry. In advance, I want to thank all those who are presenting, who's going to be speaking for us today and tomorrow. I appreciate the time and the energy that you have put into what you're going to be sharing. And I know that each of you are passionate about the topic, and I thank you that you've been able to be here and that you're going to be presenting for us. I also like to thank the sponsors of the reception that we have this evening. Here shown, thank you to ACEC for coordinating. Thank you to Atkins and DRMP, Gannett Fleming, also to McAdams and STV. We really appreciate that. As we had the reception at 5 o'clock today, it would not be taking place without these individuals, so please let them know that you appreciate it. There are 7.75 PDHs, you know, we're going to go around to the exact number, to the hundredth. We're going to get it there. But there are PDHs available. You see the handouts, the sheets on your tables. Please do sign in. I will mention that there are no paper slips that you need to pick up after each session. That'll be emailed to all participants after the conference. But we do need you to sign in so we can have documentation that you did attend. Our executive leadership at NCDOT is not able to be with us today. They're actually, AASHTO is having an event, so they're traveling, but they did leave behind a short video, so we're going to open with that.
I got the whole world in my hands. I got the whole world. You know, guys, I thought that project would really score higher than it did. Speaking of projects, man, I feel terrible. You know, we're not going to be able to make, the pre-construction workshop this year.
You know, I was really looking forward to that.
You know, I agree, Chris, but we should come up with a creative way, to kick off this event. Y'all, what is all of this?
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about all that, but what if we do this big song and dance?
Yeah, we can look
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah.
I know one thing we could focus on is the state of the department.
Well, that's easy. North Carolina.
Yeah, okay.
We could talk about project development, project delivery. You know, let's talk about goals.
Oh, yeah. It is still hockey season.
After all these suggestions, what about Atlas? I think we should definitely mention that and talk about that.
I agree. Who's this Atlas character anyway?
Not really what we were thinking.
I think the big thing is to thank everyone, our partners, our employees, for all their efforts in project delivery.
Whew. And once, Joey, I couldn't have said that one better myself. But in all seriousness, we all want to thank you for being at the NCDOT Pre-Construction Workshop. And I know, we've got an exciting event planned for you today. We're exploring, how do we use, GIS data, our technology, how do we do that to improve our right-of-way management, mapping, budgeting, and much more. We are all sorry that we couldn't be with you. We know it's a great event, and we know you'll have opportunity to learn a lot, share, be with your partners. We really want to hope that you enjoy yourselves, and we hope to see you soon.
Welcome to the Pre-Construction Workshop.
Well, we're going to keep moving on, and our first speaker today is Mr. John Sullivan from Federal Highways. John, I'll say that we appreciate the partnership of you and your team, and you always are willing to get in the boat with us when we find ourselves where we don't want to be, so I appreciate that.
Good afternoon. So what I'd like to do is give you an update on Federal Highways priorities for the upcoming year. Thank you. And this is based on a meeting we just had with our leadership in Washington, D.C. about 2 weeks ago. And so if you ask our Deputy Secretary and our Secretary, what would success look like if we fully successfully delivered the bipartisan infrastructure law? First thing they said right out of their mouth is reduce number of fatalities on our nation's highways. Second priority is reducing emissions. And then the third priority really came from our administrator is delivering the program, delivering the dollars. And really, if you think about bipartisan infrastructure law, we're in the second year, coming in on the third year of the program, and we're going to be talking about reauthorization with Congress. So it's critical, this is records amounts of funding that we've had, that we deliver the program. This is what our administrator, when he came in, told us he was keeping him up at night, was can we deliver? Do we have the capacity? And so this is what the final priority is, really a focus on people. And so what I'd like to really talk about today is safety, our delegated project authority, and a focus on incorporating people in our project decision making. So in these three topics, I think the thing that I took away from Washington, D.C. is we have some competing goals that are creating what I would call creative tension. And creative tension, in my mind, it gives us the opportunity as engineers to really think and use our engineering skills, our abilities to really try and understand and solve the problem. So the first thing I really want to talk about is fatalities and give you some context of why Congress is creating a lot of programs and a lot of different ways for us to look at fatalities. If you look at the number of fatal crashes in North Carolina, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration released the preliminary estimates for 2022. And in North Carolina, our upward trend continues. It's not a significant increase, but it did go up a couple. And so we still are about where we were about 10 to 15 years ago in the number of fatal crashes and fatalities on our highways in North Carolina. But the other things that Congress did when they introduced the MAP Act, FAST Act, and then in the bipartisan infrastructure law, is they asked us to take a look at some different areas. So what I try to do is show the safety measures that Congress asked us to look. And if you look at this table, the top table is looking at crashes on what we would call high-risk rural roads. These would be our two-lane major collectors, minor collectors, and local roads in our rural areas. And if you look at the leftmost number in the upper rows, you see this is the 5-year average between 2015 and 2019. And so what Congress asked us to do is take a look at the next 2-year interval, which was 2017, 2021. And if the rate increased, then we had to earmark funds out of our highway safety improvement program to address crashes on rural or high-risk rural roads. The second area is really looking at older drivers and pedestrians. And again, the rates here are really the number of fatalities per capita. And this is looking at older drivers, 65 or older, and older pedestrians, 65 or older. And so you can see, again, that the rate has increased. So again, because of that increase, Congress asked us to take a look at developing strategies to include in an update in our next strategic highway safety program. And then the vulnerable road users are our non-motorized users. Congress in the bipartisan infrastructure law created another data point for us to analyze. And again, here you can see that we take a look at the number of pedestrians that die and compare them to the total number of fatalities on our highways. And if that's greater than 15%, then we have to then again use 15% of our funds to address these type of crashes. Now, one thing I'd like to point out with highway safety is, what we want to use is our engineering knowledge and ability to study the problem and analyze the problem and then provide crash effective solutions that will address the problem. You hear a lot of people say we need to just broad paint and brush different types of strategies like complete streets. Well, in these programs, really what we're thinking about is, okay, what are the issues that are really causing these problems? Is there a major generator of pedestrian traffic? Like where I used to live, there was Wake Tech, and then there was apartments across the highway, but there really wasn't a good way to get across the highway. And it was a 4-lane divided highway with a speed limit of 55 miles an hour. So how can we solve that problem? It's not necessarily a complete street application, but really coming up with solutions to address the problems. And that's what we're trying to do with our highway safety. A couple of things that we're promoting are the safe system approach, which is really taking highway design, EMS, our emergency management services, enforcement, and then driver education to really have a comprehensive approach to reduce the number of fatal crashes. Another thing to take a look at, it will be in our everyday counts, is using a tool, highway lighting, to enhance the visibility and safety of pedestrians in those high-use locations. And then finally, I think I would highlight for you to be on the lookout for an update in the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, where you'll see some emphasis on what are really the safe speeds to be using as we design our facilities. Lastly, we have a program that we're really excited about in federal highways. Really doesn't impact NCDOT, but I think with our consultants and with our divisions, this is where you can help our local partners. It's called the Safe Streets and Roads for All. It's a discretionary program that really is geared at getting more local and public involvement in identifying the issues in their communities with highway safety and really building a groundswell of support to address those problems. And the idea here is we fund them to develop an action plan, which is really a document to understand the problem, and then in subsequent years provide them funds to actually implement the solutions that they come up in the planning process. So I think with safety, we've got a challenge before us. I wanted to share basically here's the why there's a focus from Congress and from the Federal Highway Administration on the national level, and really now to really transition to project delivery. With project delivery, Federal Highways has pretty much used a risk-based approach to delegate the approvals and the federal regulations that Federal Highways used to take on individual projects and delegate those to the NCDOT. And so one of the things that we've developed is a formal agreement, and this formal agreement really delineates here are the actions required in the regulations for NCDOT to take on Federal Highways' behalf. Now, on Federal Highways' behalf, that means you're acting as Federal Highways, and that you would then need to be doing the documentation that we used to have to do to support the decision making. This is just an example of one of the things we used to do. Well, we still do a corporate compliance program where we test and evaluate NCDOT's handling of these delegated responsibilities. A few years ago, we noticed there was a trend where we had great compliance and all of a sudden we had some issues. We worked with technical services, and one of the things they did is they created a nice tool. It was a responsibility requirements matrix that really not only told you what the action was, but gave you more detail on what was the intent, what were the federal requirements, where were they located, and where were NCDOT's processes and procedures that could help provide guidance on how to handle these required actions. One of the nice things is NCDOT and Technical Services put this on their project management site, and it's highlighted here on the page, and I put an arrow to where you could access the requirements matrix that would provide further guidance. This is just a screenshot at it. I know it's not very legible, but my point here is the leftmost column describes the action that's required. The next two columns are, is it on the National Highway System or is it off the National Highway System? One of the things Congress did to improve project delivery, it says, Federal Highways, we want you to focus on roadways of national significance. So for National Highway System routes, those routes are designed to standards approved by the Federal Highway Administration. On projects that are not on the National Highway System, which is about 95% of the roads in North Carolina, you design those according to state law, state regulations, state policy. So really, our focus is really not going to be on those projects. And what we really wanted to do was move on to delegating these routine projects to NCDOT so that Federal Highways could be involved more in the complex issues, more on the complex roadways like our interstates. The next two columns really give you who in NCDOT would be the point of contact for handling that decision that Federal Highways used to make. And then the column with the more detailed narrative really gives you the intent. Why is this regulatory requirement in place? The next column is really where NCDOT is linked to their guidance. And then the next links are really to Federal Highways regulations and our policies. So with this method of project oversight, we have what we call a compliance assessment program. And the purpose of our compliance assessment program is to really come back after the project has been delivered or in construction and to test, has NCDOT handled Federal Highways responsibility consistent with our regulatory requirements? The idea being here is if there's a high rate of compliance, then we will continue the delegations. If that slips a little bit, then we will work with NCDOT to come up with training, process, or procedure improvements to really improve the rate of compliance. The intent here is we don't want to slow down delivery by inserting Federal Highway Administration into the approval process. If compliance dips such that we will do that, we recognize we don't have the resources, but if we have to, we will be involved in those decision-making and do what we need to do to ensure that we get the products compliant with our regulatory requirements. But fortunately, in my 20 years of working with NCDOT, we've never had to go down that road. Finally, I want to talk really about equity, which is really a focus on the people. As Administrator Bott says, you know, we are all public servants and we're delivering for our nation. And so when you hear him talk about equity, you really hear him talking about how are we engaging the public and our communities in identifying the transportation problem that we should solve. And so really what I see different is how are we engaging folks to help us understand, the engineers understand, what is the problem that we should solve? The second part of it is really how do we better engage them through the design process so that as we're designing and building a project, that the communities that surround that project get a benefit that helps make transportation better for them. And so to me, I think those are the two big keys. When I hear about equity and I hear about public involvement and what's really different, it's really what I'm hearing is it's really about engaging people, asking them how can transportation better serve them, and then providing a facility or a transportation solution that better serves the public. And to me, it really isn't that complicated. It really is really engaging folks, getting out and knowing your communities. And I know we've got great examples of where we've done that in North Carolina. And I think what the push really here is doing more of it on a more routine basis. So with that, that's really an update from Federal Highways on what our main priorities are for the upcoming year. We do appreciate the work that you do. This is a large program, the largest federal program in history, and we won't be able to deliver it without the talent, the skills, and the abilities of the folks in this room and the rest of the NCDOT, our contracting, and our consultant community. So thank you.
Thank you, John. There's still some seats up front if anybody chooses to scoot up here and grab one. Our next speaker we're going to hear from is Dr. Joe Hummer. He's going to continue to remind us of the importance of designing with safety in mind. So, Dr. Hummer.
Terrific. Thank you so much. It is a joy to be up here. Obviously, most of the brass are somewhere else, so they reached down in the org chart a little bit to see who was available and had slides and might want to talk with you. And here I am. Happy to do that. I'm going to continue on the theme of safety. That is what I was asked to do, and really, to me, there's nothing more important than that theme. So a little bit of an odd title here, but you'll see in a moment. This is an outstanding DOT with a terrific highway system that includes our city and even the private roads out there across the state. So you probably saw the rankings released in April from the Reason Foundation, and others do the same thing, but turns out that our highway system in North Carolina is second in the country, up from 5th in 2021, trailing only Virginia at this point. Someday we'll catch them, right? They rank highway systems in 13 categories, and North Carolina's was above average in 11 of those categories. Congestion management, clearly one of those we do well in. Pavement, administrative efficiency, there's a lot of things this DOT does superbly, and we scored well. And then again, there are lots of other data sets out there that show the same thing. However, like the great philosopher said, there's a black fly in the Chardonnay. Right, and that is, of course, safety. one of the 13 categories that we scored below average. The other was some type of bridge category, but even that one wasn't that bad. Safety is our black fly. It's bad in North Carolina, and it's getting worse, as John pointed out before me. So here's the a run of recent data from the last few years. Number of fatalities, fatals per 100 million vehicle miles, MVM stands for million vehicle miles, and then fatalities per capita there, and you can see it's bad and it's getting worse. Despite spending $4 billion or more every year since 2017 on construction and maintenance, we're managing to produce more and more fatalities. That is a terrible thing. Remember that number in the previous slide? That was 17 fatalities per 100,000 people. He leads a country that also produces 17 fatalities per 100,000 people. That's the company we're in these days. That's our peer group. Right? You see a couple other countries on the slide there. That's how bad safety is in this state. Okay, we're not the worst state in the country. We don't have to look far to see one of the worst. There's a couple other ones out there. But for whatever reason, and maybe we've been dealt a bad hand coming into it as well, we are not doing well in this measure. I don't like to be anywhere in a peer group with that person. Probably you don't either. So how can we do better, right? How can we get out of this peer group? Well, I had a long research career before joining DOT, and research is certainly part of it. For a long time, when I joined the profession in the 80s, we really didn't know what was safe. In its infancy, the research had not been done. At this point, Highway Safety Manual, Crash Modification Clearinghouse, other resources out there, I'm going to claim we kind of know at this point. There's still some science left to do, but a lot of it is in the bag. A lot of it's in the book, actually, on the website. There's not too many mysteries left anymore as to what is safe. So that to me, that's not it anymore. It's a question of maybe applying what's in the book a little bit more effectively, a little bit better. So that's the setup for me proposing a standard that I was taught back in the day, and kind of remind myself of this when I can. And you were probably taught it back in the day, and here I'm, the rest of my time here, I'm going to try to remind you of this one as well. And as we go about our jobs, let's try to do this one. Let's try to apply it. And the standard is, of course, a cost effectiveness standard. It's $1 spent per crash saved. And the good news about this one, not only does it work, and it reduces the numbers on those previous slides, but it applies to, as far as I can tell, almost everything we do and almost everybody in here, regardless of your particular job. And because, again, the research is mostly in the bag, it's also something we can calculate. It's not impossible to make a numerical calculation of that number to pretty much, or let's say at least a lot of things that y'all do in this room today. It's a fair standard, and it's a tough standard. Sometimes we don't want to know the answer. It comes out to be an embarrassing answer. Some of the things we think we're doing to help make the road safer turn out really not to be so good when judged by that standard. A little bit deeper, what's the best thing we do at NCDOT as far as safety goes? Here it is. In my estimation anyway, it's the humble always stop, right? And it is superb. Always stop, all it does is prevent crashes at a very small cost. There's cost effectiveness, isn't it? Costs about $20,000 per intersection to install it, The big cost is in the added delay to the motorist on the main street that didn't have a stop sign before. So we got to factor that in as well. But even after we do that, the Humble Always Stop turns out to be a fantastic device. We've got several hundred of them out there now, installed recently on top of the legacy ones that are out there now. We probably should have 1 million of them. I don't know, a lot more than we do now, because the thing just works. There's the numbers up on the slide. What you should shoot for in the thing that you do, what I try to shoot for in the thing that I do, is hit the standard there of a benefit cost ratio of 12-to-1, or a number that comes back at $24,000 spent per crash saved. That's what the Always Stop does. If whatever you're doing is not doing that, you have to ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? Or the note at the bottom of the slide there, whatever we're spending on whatever program I'm working in, would we be better off just taking that money and buying a bunch more Always Stops? So, some of you in the room make policy, and I would challenge you to apply that standard to the policies that you make. There's a long list of things that you make us do on the pre-construction side. Do your policies meet that standard? Would we be better off not doing that thing that you're telling us to do in that policy? Would we be better off just buying a bunch more Always Stops? Oh, and by the way, stop hassling us on things like Always Stops and RCIs and such. If they're safe, let us do the safe thing. We rank really well on all those other categories, congestion and administrative efficiency and such. To me, that says, as a policymaker, you should think that we've got some margin. We've got a little bit of room to play with here. If we compromised a little bit on some of those other policies, maybe we can make room for more, what I'm kind of calling here the safety content. Also on the policy side, surely there must be something more we can do to influence driver behavior. What we're doing now can't be enough. That is certainly a lot of the problem why we have so many fatal crashes and injury crashes, right? What we're doing now to influence driver behavior, there must be more. And I don't work on that side. If you do, please tell me. I just have a feeling that there must be more out there that we could apply. Speeds, seat belts, and intoxicated drivers, as far as I know, are the 3 big ones. Maybe there's more. And isn't there something we can do to convince people to belt up, right? And don't drive do I have it on here? 50% of drivers involved in a fatal crash intoxicated on something or other. Saw that statistic recently, it blew my mind. Isn't there something we can do to convince some of those 50% of people not to get behind the wheel? If you're a planner, start quantifying safety, right? We have the numbers. This is not beyond us. Your current model doesn't quantify safety, get a new model, right? We have equations, we have factors. This is not beyond us to apply those numbers at the planning level. I know forecasting the year 2050 is an impossible job already, and I'm challenging you to do more, but we need to try, because what we're doing right now is obviously not working. And that goes for short-term planners or traffic impact analysis, developer type stuff as well. Big new development in North Raleigh. As far as I know, they did a TIA that got approved by my unit and everybody else, and nobody asked them to forecast how many crashes they were causing by putting that development in that spot. If you're a programmer, if you're in the business of spending money, deciding what gets spent, I hope that you think about the Always Stop standard as well. I don't know the real numbers on this real project out there, but the freeway widenings that we do out there, let's say if that thing costs 20 million a mile, I think that's pretty close. I don't know about whether it saves 100 crashes a year, but that's pulling a number out. We could calculate that. I'm bad at math, but I think that comes to $200,000 spent per crash saved. That means that project did 12% of the safety content of all-way stops. Now, maybe we still need to do that project, right? But we need to recognize that that is not a safety project. By doing that one, we are not doing a whole bunch of other all-way stops or whatever else that is effective out there to deliver more safety. And here's where I come in with another idea. You've probably heard it before, but let me try again. Similar to the idea of power plants and airlines that offset their carbon emissions by planting a bunch of trees, if you want to do a freeway widening and it's not delivering the safety content, maybe you should need to bundle that with installing a bunch of all-way stops. Those will be the trees that you're planting, right? So whatever you're spending, get your safety content up to whatever level by bundling with things that actually do produce safety. I'd say here maybe we do that at the division level. I don't know. But it seems to me that somebody ought to be doing that at some level. For designers, I know that you're moving that way toward performance-based geometric design. Fantastic. Keep going. I hope that the performance that you adopt is the one I'm keen on here, the cost effectiveness performance. Keep going, go quicker. Ask for design exceptions. Most of those will pay off on that standard that I'm showing you there. And then in other design areas other than geometric design that I don't know about, but I hope that you see the wisdom in that always stop standard. Over-designing is certainly not acceptable. Every dollar we spent over-designing is a dollar that could have been spent on always stop or something of that level. And if you're concerned about the liability, and you should be, you could be, I understand that. In my experience anyway, in my area, that means let's change the way our specifications are written to make sure that we are covered. We get sued, in my experience anyway, for not following our own rules rather than for things that are in our rules. So rewrite the rules. And finally, for everyone, do everything you can to hasten the arrival of AVs. That's our way out. Some of you have heard me say it before. Our job in this room is to keep as many people alive as possible until we all get AVs. The always stop, whatever else you see out there that's going to be the safety way out, that's going to help, but it's only a help. This is the only thing that I've seen in my career, the only thing on the horizon that has a chance to reduce fatalities by 80%, 90%, pick your number. This slide used to say 2037. I backed off of that a little bit now. Looking forward to 2043. I hope I'm still here to turn in my driver license and get my Waymo subscription and buzz around town that way. And when we all do that, safety recedes and we can go back to spending our money other ways. So do everything you can. That especially means public acceptance. Talk up AVs, right? Be positive on AVs. Another story in my news feed this morning, an AV had a bad crash in California. They ran into a table of Girl Scout cookie salespeople or something. I don't know. Don't pay attention to that, right? Talk it up. Try to make it happen. This is the way out of our safety dilemma. Let's get it here as soon as we can. Okay, and then when we do that, we get to enjoy some fly-free Chardonnay. We will become number one in the country, our rightful place. I hope this helped. I hope it was at least interesting. My job, I think, was to entertain and provoke without getting fired. I hope I hit that balance. And for more, I've got a session tomorrow on intersections, so come and join me for that, and I'll talk more about my specialty then. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the workshop.
Our next speaker is Ms. Glenda Gibson, and very thankful that she decided to rejoin NCDOT earlier this year. She's going to be sharing, touching on the topic of quality and how important it is for us. So, Glenda, please take it.
Wow, can y'all see me over this? I'll do the best I can. While you're getting that going, I guess I just hit enter when it's time. Thank you. Well, for those of you that don't know me, I did start my career at NCDOT, and then I went off and did some other things, and now I'm back home, and there's nowhere better that I would rather be. And what a pleasure it is to talk to y'all today. And for those of you that know, I'm the other Gibson, and my speaking skills are not nearly as refined as his, so I'll just apologize in advance. Well, today I'm here to talk to you about the good roads. The great state of North Carolina has been called the good road state for longer than any of us have been alive. Around the turn of the century, the Good Roads Association was formed. This was a small group of citizens that advocated for good roads. At that time, most roads were dirt, and counties were responsible for their own roads. And most did not have the money or equipment to build roads in any meaningful way. Counties didn't coordinate, and when you talk about roads to nowhere, we had a lot of them. In 1912, Locke Craig became known as the first good roads governor. And although many people recognize the needs for better roads, it was a woman named Miss Hattie Moorfield Berry who became known as the mother of good roads. After her supervisor went off to war in World War I, Miss Berry continued their work and was deeply involved in developing road policy to connect county seats and principal towns in the state. Governor Cameron Morris later passed the Good Roads Act in 1921 to get farmers out of the mud to get goods and services to market. And in the book, Paving Tobacco Road, William Turner writes that in 1930 we had an excellent system, and by 1931 North Carolina had authority over the largest roadway system in the nation. And the story goes on. So now why would I be up here in 2023 talking to you about ancient history? Well, the point is that our predecessors left us a legacy of good roads. So what are we doing today to ensure that legacy? We didn't get to be called the good road state because we followed what everybody else did. This afternoon, we're going to talk about the quality of our designs and how we get back to being worthy of being called the good road state. Since I came back to work for the state in January, there's been a main conversation about the quality of our work, or lack thereof. Everything from poor horizontal and vertical alignments and inappropriate typical sections, to poor sight distance and hydroplaning issues. Unsafe geotechnical equipment showing up on work sites. We have utility plans that are creating new conflicts because 2 utilities were relocated to the same location. Nearly all of these problems could have been avoided simply by following North Carolina design guidance, better coordination, and better quality control. We've got to get back to the basics. We must provide a quality work. And we are, because the people in this room are the very people that can make a difference in the kind of work products that we are producing. So, we have these guidance manuals. We start with the Green Book. AASHTO policy of geometric design on highway and streets. This sets our national standard, but we have North Carolina standards. We have manuals for just about every discipline that you can imagine. We've got the roadway design manual and hydraulics manual and manual on, I call it the driveway access manual. We've got all kinds of manuals. These are the manuals and guidance that set what North Carolina wants. North Carolina is not like every other state. We are all different. Every state is different. Most states don't have roads that go doorstep to interstate, but we do. Some states don't have to deal with ice and snow, but we do. And the list goes on. These North Carolina standards come from years of refining, and they're established to show how we do things in this state so that we provide a good quality product. We did not become known as the Good Road State because we followed what other states did. They all have great ideas, and we take advantage of those. But our guidance is our guidance. Take the time to get to know your design manuals and the expectations of the state of North Carolina. If constraints dictate deviating from these standards, please reach out to subject matter experts to discuss the best path forward. So better communication. A project is not complete without all disciplines working together to form a cohesive set of plans. The roadway design has to be coordinated with the hydraulics so that the road will drain properly. The hydraulic has to be coordinated with utility plans to avoid costly relocations and conflicts. Geotech must feed into the pavement design to avoid costly maintenance, and so on. We all know this already. What I would say is please pick up the phone and call your project team. Don't just send an email and think you've done enough. Missed emails are leading to poorly coordinated projects, and it delays our schedules. We can do better. So what I would say is communicate, and then communicate a little bit more, because that's the way we get that cohesive set of plans that have less construction revisions down the road. And then quality control. So prior to 2019, our industry had a huge push to deliver projects with compact schedules. Most of us know that, and we lived through it. This was unlike anything else in state's transportation history. We as an industry dropped our standards. Intentionally or unintentionally, it happened in order for us to deliver more quickly. We got to stop that, y'all. The standard is higher than that, and we can do better than that. North Carolina has a new quality control and quality assurance guideline. NCDOT is 2-lane to continue to do quality control on all plans. Our guidance puts that role on the designer and the firm doing the design. NCDOT provides quality assurance. Our role is to make sure that the designs are checked and to provide a high-level review of those plans. This process will not work if the team doing the design does not provide a thorough quality control check before every deliverable is submitted. This check must be done by a senior subject matter expert on North Carolina design. I recently pulled a sampling of projects from a variety of designers. In many cases, it appeared that a thorough quality control review was not done. In some cases, comments that were provided by a GEC consultant on another consultant's plans were ignored without sufficient explanation why. That can't be. Whenever there are two in conflict, y'all need to get together and you need to reconcile that and resolve it. And if you two can't come to consensus, then reach out to your central subject matter experts, your roadway, your hydro, your geotech, your utilities, your traffic, etc. They are all there to help you deliver a quality product. And it is their heart's desire that they do that in conjunction with you. I challenge each of you to always start with North Carolina guidance, and then, as constraints dictate a deviation from our design, write a design exception. Complete a design decision document and get buy-in from NCDOT. Reach out to your team members in every way possible to ensure your projects are properly coordinated and your schedules are maintained. If you see a conflict on your project, whether it's in your discipline or not, coordinate and ensure that we're all producing well-designed, constructible projects that are easy to maintain. And lastly, make every deliverable. Make sure it's had a thorough quality control review by a knowledgeable subject matter expert. So tomorrow, Nicole Hackler, Jeff Wren, and I are going to be providing more details in a breakout session on 100% PS&E packages. I think it's very enlightening, and I consider that our gift to the industry. Nicole has got a list of those things that are common problems. I pulled together a list of common problems for design. It's not going to get it all right, but you know what? It's a good start. I'll leave you with this. The only way that we can produce good roads in this state is when we all work together. And I know a lot of you out there, and I know that you're the best at what you do. In 50 or 100 years, let it be said of us that we left a legacy of good roads. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Glenda. Our final person that we'll hear from today is Mr. Kevin Bowen. He's going to give a brief update from the Chief's office.
Wow, what a great turnout. It's good to see so many familiar faces. Look forward to catching up with many of you, and those I haven't had an opportunity to meet, I hope I get a chance to do that in the next couple of days. On behalf of the Chief Engineer's Office, I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us over the next 2 days. This is really important for all of us. I'm sure you've seen the agenda. We've got some really good information to be shared with you and a good opportunity for networking and building relationships. Let's take a moment and look back at some of our accomplishments over the last year. So as noted on that last slide, these accomplishments are only because of the folks in this room, and we can only thank all of you for the work that you do. I want to thank our NCDOT staff. I want to thank all of our industry partners for the working relationships that we have. I hope that you will take advantage of our time together the rest of today and tomorrow. Continue to network, continue to build those working relationships. I hope that we'll make this agency even better through this workshop. That would be a tremendous goal. and I hope that we can continue to serve the citizens of North Carolina. So thank you for all of your efforts, and I hope that you enjoy the workshop. I'll turn it back over to Matt to wrap this opening session up.
Thank you all. We're going to have a brief 15-minute stretch break. Don't go too far because we're going to get started with our general session number 1 soon. Thank each of you who spoke, and we have some good topics lined up for us in the next hour. So take a few minutes, and again, thank you. You already see that this is a workshop, not a conference, so I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you can find your seats, we'd like to get restarted in 1 minute. Find your seats. We'll restart in about 1 minute. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll find your seats, please, we'd like to get restarted. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Me.
Very nice job. You did good. So,
Good afternoon. If you guys could take your seats, we're ready for another exciting session. So before we get started, I just wanted to remind y'all of the Slido app. We are going to have a couple of questions in this session that are going to use that app. So y'all get your phones out and get ready for it. And our first presentation is going to be Jennifer Evans and Sean Epperson, and they're going to talk to us about project manager training. Guys?
Okay. How's everybody doing? Okay. So Glenda mentioned project manager training, but I really want to start with talking about the PM Leadership Committee. A little bit of background on this. So Technical Services has recognized for a while that project managers, the project teams need guidance and training. That's why they do these project manager calls once a month. But what they also realized, and we all recognize, is they're not the ones dealing with this stuff on a day-to-day basis. So they decided back in 2021 to develop this project management leadership committee. The goal of that committee is to take and learn what everybody needs to know. Like, so we have a variety of group of people from all across the state. And the idea is for them to reach out to everybody, figure out what is needed, and bring these new causes and bring these new policy updates and training and everything for everybody. Excuse me. I'm very nervous, by the way. For those who know me know that I talk fast, so I'm going to try and slow down. So the PM Leadership Committee was developed. Our current team, and I would like everybody to stand up as I call your name if you don't mind, is Matt Clark, Wanda Payne, she may not be here, We got Barry Hobbs, who'll be rotating off and replaced by Katie Height. We got Steve Kendall, who will also be rotating off and replaced by Sean. Yeah. Matichevsky. Myself, I'll be rotating off and be replaced by Claudia Lee. And then Jeanette White, who is currently the deputy chair, will become the new chair of the committee. Then we got Jennifer Evans, Rochelle Beauregard, Jacqueline Bowles, and Todd Meyer. Y'all can sit back down. Back up. So what I didn't say is, so this is a 2-year commitment. So when you join the PM Leadership Committee, you're joining for 2 years. And then we rotate off in between. So every year, we're rotating some folks off and rotating some folks on. The idea is to keep some consistency from year to year, but bring in, kind of fresh blood, new ideas, new opinions, to make sure that we're constantly, looking out for and looking at different ideas and different issues and addressing those issues. So when we set up the PM Leadership Committee, we came up with a charter, and this was to set the committee's purpose. So it was assist in development and update of project manager guidance documents, develop agendas for that PM monthly call, assist in training needs of the project managers, assist with project delivery policies, and develop and disseminate this information to all the folks across the state. The 2 items I have highlighted are training. Are mostly training. It's been our focus for the last year is training. And Jennifer's going to go into that a lot more detail, but the training is critical in my opinion. I was very fortunate in my opinion to have been part of the PM Leadership Committee in this last 2 years, or last year, because to me, training is very important. When I joined project development, it was right after decentralization. All divisions were just now getting heavily involved in the project delivery process, and we were shifting to that mindset of that model of one project manager seeing that project from cradle to grave. And since my time in project development, I've recognized that we don't know what we're doing sometimes. I mean, that's the reality. These projects are complicated, they're complex, and it was something new. So the training that we've looked at over the past year, we've tried to get going, has been very important to me, and I've been very, very, very lucky to have been part of it. So before we go into that training a little bit more, we developed this email address, and it's on here, and we've mentioned it on our PM calls, but we do want to hear from y'all. We want to know where these issues are at, where your concerns are at. Is there some policy, some procedure that's not working? Is there some process that doesn't have a policy or procedure? Whatever it may be, whether you're NCDOT staff, our industry partners, whoever, use this email. Maybe wait till July 1st when I rotate off so I can not get them all. Joking. Would love to hear from y'all. We want to know where your concerns are at, where we can help. Your email may not generate a new policy. Maybe there's something already out there that exists, but you don't know about it. We'll get that information to you. If need to, we'll start talking in our PM Leadership Committee about updating a policy. Maybe it's bigger than that. Maybe we got to set a whole new committee set up to figure this issue out. Whatever it is, we can't fix it if we don't know about it. So let us know. So in the last year, we've been focusing, like I said, heavily on training. I went back and was actually looking through our minutes and to get an idea of what all we've done, and every single month, we talked about training. We dealt with other issues. We dealt with other policy documents, procedures, whatever it may be, but we were always talking about training. So updating the division managed project delivery training. What we noticed is when the decentralization occurred, there was a lot of training developed, but people didn't have access to it. So we've compiled it all. We're getting it out there. It'll be on the website. You'll be able to get to it. We're updating it as needed, especially with the PDN. PDN didn't exist 4 years or 6 years ago, whenever that is. So we're updating these policies, this training, so that it incorporates our current procedures, current thought process, whatever we've got going on today, because we're a constantly evolving agency. What we're setting up today may not work 2 or 3 years from now. So we're setting up everything to where it can evolve and be modified as needed as things change. So guiding the development of project delivery training curriculum, the learning path. That is the next process, and Jennifer's going to talk about it in more depth. But the PM Leadership Committee is going to be key to that. They're going to be the governing body that oversees that training, that blesses it, and makes sure that that training suits the needs of all the individuals in this room. So, time for a Slido question if you want to pull out your phones. So here we're curious. What type of training most suits your needs? Let us know. See, it keeps fluctuating. See where it's going to stop. Okay. We'll say that's kind of where I thought it would be. It's kind of what I think makes sense. Different type of training, different type of needs, depending on what the training is, what it is. Maybe it's online, maybe it's web-based, maybe it's in person.
Okay, so I'm going to take this opportunity to provide a little bit more in-depth look at this project management curriculum, aka the learning path that we're working on developing. So you may ask, what is the project management curriculum learning path? So we envision this as a series of courses that are going to be designed to help project managers successfully deliver projects. The curriculum will be offered in multiple levels and will be a combination of online and in-person training, which I think is reflected in the results that we saw from that Slido. People learn differently, and there's certain value in online, and there's certain value in person. The curriculum will blend the technical skills with soft skills that are necessary for effective project managers. Unfortunately, project management isn't just a guidebook. There's strategy and there's soft skills. So we really want to develop a curriculum that will help to develop project managers in that way as well. So the purpose for providing this curriculum is really to look at, and Sean kind of hit on it, there's been a lot of available information that has been put out over the last few years. But sometimes it can be overwhelming and hard to find, and maybe it's felt piecemeal. And so the goal would really be to take the guidance and training and really develop a curriculum that PMs can follow, that feels like it has a flow, and use some of that training that's already out there, the guidances that have already been developed, but put them in an organized fashion that you can develop. Showing the learning path, it's our hope that it could fast track a project manager's learning curve, as well as to help the department recruit new project managers. And the vision for the curriculum would be, right now we've identified 3 levels. So the first level would be an introductory level, introduction to project management, and that would really cover the basics of project management. The goals of that training would be to provide a clear understanding of the roles and duties of the project manager. The targeted audience would include both internal and external professionals interested in learning general project management skills. So it could be for new people like on the training program, people looking to start a different career path. And the goal would be to really provide broad topic training by utilizing, like I said, the new and existing online resources, but also offering a personal touch point for mentoring and coaching during and after the training is complete, because we feel like that's really important. The second level is more of a comprehensive project management training, and we're calling that the Project Management Essentials. And you can see there, I marked in red, that's really our priority focus. I think that's the area that we really need to put our efforts into, is really give active and current project managers a real training program. This would provide a solid base of project management essentials to set project managers up confidently deliver those quality projects that Glenda spoke of. The targeted audience for this training would begin by targeting the current NCDOT project managers. That includes the modes, divisions, central project managers, but eventually we would look to maybe expand the methods to include others. But our first focus would be on DOT project managers first. And the goal would be to provide module-specific training by utilizing those new and existing resources, and that would be a 101 level is basically what we would call that. And then that would be paired with a regional in-person cohort to provide instructor-led opportunities for discussion and exercises to tie together those important technical skills with those critical soft skills. So that would be the 102. And then the longer-term goal would be to also work on a level 3, and this is a more programmatic approach to project management. This is program management strategies for, really this is for leaders who are managing not only projects, but managing people and teams of people that are managing projects. I think there's a lot of different reporting and skills that project managers need to lead programs. So this would be available to DOT supervisors that lead the delivery of project programs. And again, it would be a mix of that online and in person. So let's dive deeper for just a minute into things to come. So this is a look at that comprehensive project manager level 2 training that we said is our priority focus. So we've worked together as a group to identify 9 modules that we feel are a good place to start. And you'll see here, I've kind of grouped them in 3s, but we have a module of managing scope, schedules, and managing teams, leading productive teams. Then we have a module of budgets, contracts, and then a leading teams through planning and environmental documentation. And then another module of managing quality, risk, and the PS&E package. So this is a deeper dive into the managing schedules module. And so you can see here that the goal of the managing schedules module would be to teach participants how to work with their team to develop and review realistic and reliable schedules. And then we would work with participants to gain insight into how to look and work with critical path, practice recognizing where and when a project could derail, that proactive strategic thinking in advance of when things go wrong, and then also learning how to take corrective action to keep the project on schedule when sometimes things do go wrong. Participants would expect to receive instruction and practice incorporating soft skills such as critical thinking and problem solving, organizing and prioritizing, and maybe even negotiating tactics. So with that, we have another Slido question. And from your perspective, we're curious to see which of the 9 training modules that I just discussed, which of the 3 do you see as the top need? So I'll give you a minute. I mean, I think it's clear they're all good topics, and it looks like everybody sees need for a lot of those: schedule, scope, budget, productive teams, quality, risk. I like it. So hopefully those ideas speak to all of you. So I'd just like to take a minute to thank the group that's working very hard to make this happen. We have a really good group: Katrina Feltis, Wendy Smith, Tara Canales, Derek Weaver, Glenda Gibson, and Matt Clark, as well as Sean has discussed, the role that the PM Leadership Committee is taking in this effort. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean and Jennifer. I think we're all excited about what's to come. And I think we can all use some of those tactics that we're going to learn. So thanks for that presentation. Next up, we have Boyd Tharrington. Boyd's going to give us an update from the chief's office and maybe talk about constructability and things that we all are excited to hear about. Thanks, Boyd.
Thank you. Got to raise this microphone up about a foot or so here. Just arrow forward. Yes, sir. All right. Well, yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Boyd Tharrington. I'm the Director of Field Support out of the Chief Engineer's office, and I'll steal one of Joe's lines. You know, Matt was looking for somebody from the Chief's office to be here today. I think Kevin mentioned Chris Peoples couldn't be here. He's off on business. Lamar had some obligations with his family, so Matt was reaching, trying to find somebody to come up here and talk for the Chief's office. And I happened to miss a staff meeting, and Kevin and Mark recommended to Matt that I would be the appropriate person to come up here and deliver this presentation today. So, lesson learned, be careful when you miss a staff meeting. Kevin had the easy piece up here, but that's okay. I'm happy to be here to talk. Like Glenda said, my topic is really kind of a chief's office updates, and that's really kind of a generic title, and I'll tell you what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to go over some financial highlights for the department. Our financial situation and our stability and our overall financial health is a very important topic to the chief's office. It's a very important topic to all of our leadership, and I think it's an opportunity to share some of that information with you guys who you may not hear it unless you attend a board meeting or a staff meeting or an executive level type meeting. Next slide here. So again, current financial highlights. Again, financial health is an absolute critical topic for us. I think everybody in the room is aware we've had our ups and downs over the last few years, and so monitoring where we're at is critical. This is a slide that's often shown to our board and other folks. It really just kind of takes a snapshot of where we're at financially. Top left corner, you can see our cash balance right now is very, very in a very healthy place, I'd say, about $2.4 billion. Other important stats on this sheet, days cash on hand, you see in that top third column over. Days cash on hand, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but that's a metric that we really look at to see at the rate we're spending money, how many more days could we continue at that rate of spending? Towards the middle there, you see our open commitments, and that's commitments we have on the street. Whether it's consultant contracts, construction contracts, you name it, goes into that number. $8.6 billion in open commitments that are out there on the street right now. Of those, about 75% constitute our construction program, which is by far our largest expenditure. This is a kind of a breakdown of where our money goes, and this is year to date. You can see on the pie chart there. These are the different buckets of spending for the department. The large section of the pie there in blue is really our external payments to consultants, contractors, and other external partners. That makes up about 75% of our total spend. And over on the right, you can see a breakdown of that, of which about 64% is payments to contractors, and about 10% of that is private engineering firms and consultant contracts. So a good deal of our expenses are going out onto the street to our external partners, which we are very appreciative of all of them. This slide here, I think, really demonstrates, it really shows you how we track our financial position over time. You can see this chart showing our projected cash balance. And about there, where you see that dotted line diverge from the solid line, that's about the April time period, so April of 2023. And you can see that there's so much data that goes into this projection of the cash balance in this forecast. It's a tremendous amount. It involves every program we have, our maintenance programs, our capital construction program, PE, right-of-way utilities. All those things roll into that number. And there's a lot of folks that work on this model. Stephanie King and her team in the fiscal group there. Stephanie King's our chief financial officer. Her and her team, as well as external partners like SAS, Ernst & Young, the chief's office, it's a collaborative effort to really develop this spend plan. And you can see that number going down. You can see the trend really starting now. The model is showing the cash balance starting to go down a little bit over time. You know, that dash line I'll just highlight there, that is the dash line that shows that we're really kind of underspending right now. If you look at our current spend plan, we're trending behind it a little bit, anywhere from 8 to 10%. And if that trend continues, then our cash balance will be a little bit higher than that solid line that you see there. But the main message here is we are monitoring our spending, and we're looking out into the future and seeing what we're going to spend and making sure we stay in the right place really financially so that we stay out of trouble. A couple of quick slides. I won't get into detail on these, but we're looking at a couple other metrics to really analyze financial health. One of those is cash as a percentage of commitments. I showed that a $2.4 billion cash balance with the $8.6 billion in commitments. That ratio really tells us we're about 28% of cash versus commitments, which we think is a pretty healthy place. This chart really enables us to kind of monitor that metric and see where we're at any given time. And I skipped this one, but this is also a days cash on hand metric. What do we think is an appropriate number of days cash that we should have on hand at any given time? If that number gets too high, maybe we look at some ways to accelerate spending. If that number gets low, then we need to start taking action. Okay. Real quick, couple slides on STIP development. As everybody knows, the STIP's kind of in the process of going through the approvals to ultimately end up with a final approved STIP from Federal Highways. Back in April last year, the draft STIP was released. In July, we had some additional revenues thanks to our leadership and our General Assembly. We were blessed to have access to some additional revenues, which is key. In August, a revised STIP was developed in August of 22, and now here we are in June. We're about to be presenting the draft STIP, the final STIP to our board for the board to adopt it. The next step from there, it goes out to the MPOs, goes out to the RPOs and gets their approval, and then ultimately it ends up with Federal Highways, which hopefully we can have an approved STIP by FHWA around the September timeframe. A couple of quick highlights on it. Between the last draft STIP and what you'll see in the final STIP, there were some changes. As y'all know, our STIP has to be fiscally constrained, and between the last draft and where we sit now, some things have changed. Maybe it's project cost, revenue forecasts, other things come into play there, but the STIP was basically unbalanced, so we had to make some minor adjustments to it. Some of the highlights there, about 41 projects were delayed for a year, 8 projects delayed 2 years, and 3 projects delayed 3, 4, or 5 years. So those are adjustments that we had to make, again, because we have to be fiscally constrained with our STIP. All right. Alternative delivery. Want to talk about this. Probably the main highlight there is our design build unit has been merged with our priority projects team to create the alternative delivery unit. So basically design builds being rebranded or renamed back to alternative delivery unit, which at one time it was called the alternative delivery unit, and then it was separated out. We really think it's appropriate to bring it back together to reflect the fact that we're delivering projects in multiple ways. Design build, we've got CMGC, which is relatively new for us, Express Design Build and P3, all those things under one roof. As far as progressive design build, if you're familiar with that delivery method, we do have legislation right now that's at the General Assembly in our 2023 agency bill to try to get authorization to do progressive design build delivery. Some other things that are really going to be important in alternative delivery is really implementing a programmatic approach to selecting the right projects for the right delivery methods. Been working with Derek and Matt on trying to figure out a way to implement an approach like that. And then also refining our CMGC and progressive design build policies is going to be a really important thing for this team in the coming years. A little history, 2018 was when we got CMGC passed in the General Assembly. That was a pilot program for 5 projects up to $100 million apiece. In 2022, last year, we upped the dollar value of the projects from $100 million to $500 million per project. And in this current agency bill, we're seeking to expand the number of projects that we can pilot from 5 to 8. So making some changes there legislatively related to CMGC. We've got a handful of CMGC projects on the street. There's a breakout session that's going to be talking about a couple of these projects. I think it's a great opportunity if you're not familiar with CMGC to go in there and hear from some of the folks managing those projects on how that process works and how it's going. We're very excited about it. Some of the benefits we've seen, and I won't sit here and read them, but there's a lot of benefits to CMGC, and probably the main one in my mind is mitigating risk, which is something I'm going to talk about in just a minute. So my last topic is construction program delivery, and really I would maybe rebrand this designing with construction in mind. What are some things that are going to be key for us delivering our construction program and avoiding some of the pitfalls that we encounter when projects go live and they hit that let date? Kind of starting up with a 12-month let list, one thing that's very important to our industry partners, AGC and our contractors, is maintaining our delivery schedules, particularly our 12-month let list. Contractors really use this as a tool for planning their work. And when there's changes in our 12-month let list, it throws off their plans. They're thinking about where are my crews going next? What's that next project we're going to go after? Changes to that 12-month let list are something we really would like to emphasize and maybe get better at avoiding those types of changes. Managing risk is another key to success to delivering the program, and those things, not only in project development and pre-construction, but also managing risk through the duration of the construction project. Emphasis on constructability. I'm going to pick on Jennifer a little bit. That PM training, I didn't see anything on there about constructability, but that's okay. We do want to emphasize constructability and putting plans out that are constructible. And I was talking to Aaron Earwood the other day, and he kind of said we got to clear the hurdles, and I think that's key, because hurdles we encounter during construction, that equals time and that equals money. Timely response to issues, that's one thing that in my role prior to Director of Field Support, I was state construction engineer, and a lot of claims, a lot of issues float up to the central construction office. And I can tell you a lot of times those issues, you can trace that back to we didn't resolve issues in a timely manner. We let things sit. We didn't provide answers at the right time. And that's not a design issue or a construction issue. A lot of times it's both. But we got to get better at providing timely responses. Cost containment, that's another key thing that we talk about. I mentioned the STIP and projects had to slide in the program. Well, that's because costs go up. So when you think about cost containment, we think about it during design. Joe Humber talked about over-designing. We don't want to over-design. Are we putting out the right project? Are there opportunities there for, to minimize some right-of-way, or is there a cheaper way to build a bridge, or those sorts of things? And then cost containment during construction. Let's cut back on claims and change orders. And then finally, collaboration. And I thought Glenda's, she showed the picture of that telephone, and I was like, I like that picture, because to me, collaborate. I'd rather somebody pick up the phone and give me a call than have an email get buried that I miss. What's the challenge? Jennifer's presentation kind of hit on some of that. Decentralization, and not that that's a bad thing, but we develop projects out of a lot of places. There's a lot of hands there, a lot of project managers. I think it's over 120, 100. She's nodding. I'll say 120. A lot of folks managing projects, a lot of varying experience levels there. Out in the divisions, a lot of varying experience levels on the construction side of the house as well. External partners, we all know, challenge to delivery. We're dealing, our consultant partners is one thing, but you think about the railroad, you think about all the utilities we interact with. A lot of challenges there. And top right, you see leadership. It's probably your biggest challenge you got there is dealing with leadership. When they get involved, it's never good. So I like this graph at the top right because it really kind of says it all. Going from planning through construction, the cost to implement changes goes up as you go through that process. the earlier you can identify issues, it's cheaper. You can influence cost and things early on much more effectively than you can later in the process. But if we don't communicate, all those things there at the bottom are the issues or the consequences we're going to face if we don't do a little better job, all of us together, at communicating. There's lots of opportunities that are really baked into our processes. The PDN's a fantastic tool. It's got some formalized touch points and things in our process that we should be doing. Among those, risk management, post-construction assessments, CLEAR program is referenced in there. Constructability reviews are scattered throughout. Lots of touch points on the PDN. And of course, our field inspections, which there's probably some opportunities there where we can share and make those meetings more productive. Let me back up, though. I will say this. Regardless of what's formalized and what's baked into our process, I really do feel like communicating on the construction side and having construction staff at the table when decisions are being made, when we're talking about utilities or MOT or all these important things, I think the more we can collaborate and formally or informally work with the construction side of the house, and that's a two-way street. Our construction staff needs to be available to you. They need to be providing that level of input throughout the design process as well. We can clear a lot of hurdles that way. I want to mention our post-construction assessments because, again, I think that's just another tool. A lot of folks, you guys wrap up design work on your projects. You moved on to the next one, and everybody's very busy. But this is an opportunity to look back and talk to that project team and see how did things go? How did that design I produced? How did what happened out in the field? Where were the stumbling blocks? And hopefully an opportunity to learn in a transparent way and without fear of being we're not out to point fingers or throw anybody under any buses, but it's a great opportunity to get feedback. Risk management program is something Allison Tamer's been working hard to really bring into our culture more of a risk, and I like the word risk management because I do really believe that risk should be managed. We all know there's risk in every project that we're working on. And to some degree, everybody's working actively to manage those risks. I do think there's some times in places where a formalized process can be tremendously helpful to keep everybody informed of the risk, monitor those risks, and then have some accountability there that these issues are being solved and we're bringing the right people to the table. Our CLEAR program, if you haven't heard of that, it's an exchange where we can really record those lessons learned and advice from others and have as a repository where folks can dig out and see, has this issue been dealt with in other places? Where can I find that information and share those practices? I would encourage you to visit the CLEAR website. Formal constructability reviews, always a tool that we have. We've done 61 of them in the last 10 years, and when I saw that number, I said, that's kind of low. I think we could there's probably more opportunities out there where a formal constructability review would be needed. And when I say formal, I mean involving the contractor as well as the project team looking to figure out a problem. So I would just encourage, if you have a situation where you're dealing with something where some contractor input would be of a benefit, take advantage of this program. And I'm getting close to the end, I promise. Resident Engineer's Guide. This is something I'm really happy to steal Matt's ideas because Matt comes up with lots of good ideas. And so the PM Guide came out and I started getting jealous. I said, we need to have a Resident Engineer's Guide. So we started work on that last year. And the guide is sort of PDN-like, but the key thing there is it's got a whole section there, a phase really dealing with project development, and it's really kind of to provide our RE offices, our divisions, our DCEs, and others really some best practices on how and where they should be involved on the pre-construction side. And again, it goes back to those young engineers and folks that may not be as familiar as others, and this formalizes some things they can be doing to help in that regard. guess my closing thought on this whole thing is, continue to bridge in the communication gaps. It's so important. We collaborate together from pre-construction through construction, make sure we have a good project handoff, and that construction staff is aware of the risk, they're aware of the decisions that were made and why, but also kind of working together to minimize risk throughout the process. And then finally, that closing that loop is always important. So with that, I'm done. Thank you all very much for everything that you do. Thank you.
I'll lower this again. Thank you, Boyd. That was, I appreciate all the things you had to say, and I don't know if you mentioned the audit, but, we just finished, the auditor's office just finished their audit of NCDOT, and we are financially sound, clear of, no bad marks. So that's something we're all very, very proud of. So appreciate you, Boyd. And Derek, now you're going to come and talk to us about the PDN and scope and schedules and all that fun things that make us successful. Derek?
All right. As Gene's coming up here, just want to remind everyone that we are going to take questions at the end. And if you have a question, you just submit it through the Slido app, because that's how we're going to do that. And Eugene and Terry will read those at the end as we get there. So good afternoon. I really appreciate all of y'all being here today. It's great to see a packed house. And just know that after I get done, there's a break. And so you'll get a minute to get up and really move around. It's actually a 30-minute break. So have an opportunity for networking. So as Glenda said, today I'm going to talk a little bit about the PDN, try to highlight some best practices and thoughts, and a little bit on the scope and the schedule. Let's see. Oh, I don't want to go yet. So sorry. So as I was getting ready for this, I was talking to somebody and telling them I was going to be talking about the PDN. And they looked at me and they said, the PDN? I've heard of a PDA, public display of affection, but what's the PDN? So, there may still be a little bit of confusion out there, but I'm pretty sure that most of you in the room today know that the PDN is the Project Delivery Network. I feel like when we rolled the PDN out, it was kind of like this new kid. And a lot of people were really not sure about, they weren't sure they wanted to be friends with this person. And, is this going to be a lasting relationship, but now we're kind of moving into a phase of where the PDN's growing up, and it's kind of in that awkward middle school years, where things are changing, and it's kind of a rough season. But just as, those kids grow up and become mature adults, just like the rest of us, the PDN is also growing, and it's also growing up, and it's changing. It's going to get refined as it grows, and I really feel like you're hearing a common theme today. As we develop and change, we keep having new things that we have to learn. So the point of this whole corny comparison is that the PDN probably needs a little PDA, just like those middle schoolers did. Okay. I know everybody really, a lot of times they cringe when they hear the word PDN. So, all right. So now that I got your attention, let's actually do a Slido question and find out just how familiar you are with the PDN. So I'll give you a second to look at those questions. All right. Well, that's good. Most people are at least either familiar or somewhat familiar with it, and unfortunately, most people don't wonder what happened to their cheese. So that's good. So, all right. So we'll move on then. But before we get too far, let me remind you why we created the PDN. You know, if you look back, we were looking at ways to streamline project delivery, and then we needed a way to document that process. And as you've heard, there's a lot of new processes, and there's a lot of new people. So, you know, it's going to take time as we change and as things grow, but we're going to get there. We additionally created it to break down silos and really create transparency. I know most of you would have really appreciated a document like this when you got started, to really be able to see everything that happened at DOT and how it all kind of worked together. And again, with all the new people, I still think that's a valuable tool. And then finally, it was a way to define the deliverables and identify roles. You know, we've transitioned to the project manager and technical manager, so it was important to clarify, you know, what was needed and who was responsible. But again, remember, the PDN is a living document, so it's going to continue to be refined. Now, as most people, you know, looked at the PDN, they probably thought, oh, it's a process map. I can use that to figure out how to develop my project more efficiently. Well, that may be true to some extent, but because the PDN does show, you know, stages and suggest activities to be included. However, the PDN is flexible, it's scalable, which means it's not a cookbook. You need to determine what makes sense for your project. And don't forget, the PDN was developed for a smaller project, not a bridge project, not a new location project. So maybe the statement we should have said all along was that you need to use the PDN, not follow the PDN. So what does that mean? You know, let's start with what is the PDN. It's really a support document or a tool that really lays out the probable activities, tasks, deliverables, references that are needed to deliver a project. Now, I don't say all the possible activities, deliverables, references, tasks, etc., because every project is unique and it's different. And of course, there's always that completely out-of-the-box project that nobody wants really to deal with. But one thing I want to tell y'all, when you're looking at your scope, no one wants to hear, oh, I included that because it was in the PDN. Or, well, I didn't include it because it wasn't in the PDN. This is about thinking critically about what is needed for that project. The PDN is just a tool. It's a guide. All right. Now, someone would ask, can the PDN, can someone deliver the project with the PDN? Maybe, if they're a seasoned person. But generally, you're going to need more information. So imagine when you first got started in your field and someone handed you the roadway design manual or the project management guide or the hydraulics guide or all the other guides that we've talked about. You'd have some really good information, but you really couldn't do your job without a little bit of further guidance. Now, eventually, that manual or guide, it would become your Bible. And you would be able to quote chapter and verse. Now, I'm not going to tell you the PDN is the Bible, but it does reference, similarly, chapter and verse. And it is a really great guide to project delivery. You know, each activity has links for more information that helps to inform and guide and help you understand what needs to be accomplished. The PDN should be used as a tool for developing your project scope and schedule. The key deliverables and activities should be built into your MS project schedule and scope so that the project manager and the team can really know what they need to do. The scoping tool is built so that you can pick the activities and deliverables that are needed to put into your schedule. Also, the PDN provides clear language and identifiers that helps to provide the consistency and transparency so that we all understand. We can all speak with one voice, which is going to help us to accomplish more and have a stronger team. The PDN, what it is not. So the PDN was developed for everyone to use, but it's not the project management guide. That's a separate tool that's focused on what project managers do. Remember that the PDN project manager refers to the person managing the project scope, schedule, budget, risk, and quality. Most of us refer to ourselves as PMs, But in the PDN, we're probably actually activity leads or technical leads. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have a scope, schedule, budget, that you don't need to manage risk and quality as a part of your day-to-day work. But normally that's focused more on an activity, not the whole project. So just keep that in mind as we think about excuse me, what a project manager is. And then the other thing I want to say is, at the end of the day, we were trying to streamline and improve project delivery. But if you'll call in the past, we said that we're going to measure things based on a program approach. So what that means is some projects are going to take longer and some are going to be done quicker. So the average is going to be better. Now, hopefully you've learned something today, but let's check out with a Slido question. This is a multiple choice question, so take a look and you can pick more than one answer for what you think you've learned today. All right, we've got a lot of answers coming in, and most of them are high, so that's good. Let's see. And the PDN is not a four-letter word. That one's getting high up there. That's good to know. So, all right. So that's good. That's helpful. All right, now, just a couple of thoughts about moving forward, kind of what's next. We've been discussing, would it be helpful to consider a bridge PDN or a new location PDN, and we were considering if that's something that would be helpful. It's something we're looking at. We're also looking at a draft scoping template that has the activities listed in more of a workflow versus the alphabetical order, because we're hoping that might make a little more sense. So that's something we're looking at. Additionally, we're looking at an MS project template, and reviewing one that has also things more in a project flow, and it's not just strictly based on this stage or that. It mixes things, and maybe in the sense of how we think about delivering a project. Roles and responsibilities, that's another thing that we're looking at. We want to help better represent that and get people to understand and better clarify that. And then finally, stage one improvements. This summer we'll be rolling out the updated version of the PDN, and it's going to have a lot of stuff that's changed in stage one. Really, we're going to be looking at the formatting and get it to be more consistent in the write-ups for stage one, as well as trying to shift some of the activities so they align better with either Express Design or the project scoping report. As I said, so that'll come out in the summer update of the PDN. There'll be other changes. This will probably be the biggest change, but as always, there's a red line version, so you'll be able to see what we did change when we did it. Now, finally, as I walk away, what I don't want you to walk away saying is that Derek said we don't have to follow the PDN and that schedules don't matter, okay? What I want you to take away is that the PDN is a tool to help the team deliver the project to be more effective. And I've lost my note. And so that we can think more critically about how we're going to deliver this project. The PDN is only as good as you make it. And just remember, the PDN needs a little more PDA. All right. And if you have questions, I've listed my email, but you're also welcome to just send it to Sean and Jennifer to that email address. That works perfectly as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Derek. I'm going to try to remember PDN's not a four-letter word. That's what my take on was. No, I'm joking. Okay, we have a few minutes for question and answer. Okay, can I see that? Do I start at the bottom or the top? Start at the top. Okay. The first question is, at some point in the future, will there be a requirement for NCDOT PMs and/or consultant PMs to be certified or go through PM training and leadership program? Sean, Jennifer?
I'll answer that one. At this point, we don't have like that's in place. However, that would be a great thing. It's something that other states do, and I think that's a lofty goal that we'd love to get to. But right now, we're just, as Jennifer and Sean kind of shared, we're just trying to get it up and running. So, but in the future, that would be great. But we don't really have a plan for that yet.
Okay, thank you.
You want to add, Sean?
Yeah, I would say,
Use the
like Derek said-
microphone.
like Derek said, that would be a great goal. I think just getting the training out there and getting that guidance out there for those folks is going to be the first important step. I mean, whether they're certified or not, if they've got the training and they've got the ability to review all that and go through those materials is going to be critical.
Thank you. All right, next question. When will the PM modules be finalized and actual training start?
So, is this on?
Yes.
Should be. You need to pull it a little closer, probably.
Okay, so I would say to expect to start seeing training roll out 2024. Early 2024, I would hope.
Yeah, I think that's a good date. Okay, next question. The Chief's Office update stressed communication, but also noted only 61 construction reviews were completed in the past 10 years. Who's responsible for coordinating those reviews, and how can designers get feedback from construction to get lessons learned?
Okay, let's see. I would say with who would be responsible for coordinating the reviews. Value management really takes the lead whenever a constructability review is requested by the project team or the project manager. Value management unit would take the lead on coordinating that, working with AGC to identify the appropriate contractors that we would want to attend that review. But as far as who could trigger it, it's really anybody on the project team who identifies a constructability issue can really bring that up and really request that review take place. But the coordination would go through value management. How can designers get feedback from construction to get lessons learned? I think there's probably a couple things going on there. I mean, one, we talked about the clear database is really one place you can go to really dig into some lessons learned from the construction side. But just general feedback from construction could really come from kind of anywhere.
And I was going to say, if your design team is actively participating in construction revisions, you should be working with that resident.
That's right.
I mean, what better feedback than having to deal with issues? So.
Yeah, so the division construction staff's a great resource, but also the central construction unit. We've got our area engineers scattered around the state that provide expertise in roadway and structures on the eastern and western sides of the state. We've got regional bridge construction engineers, which are tremendously knowledgeable when it comes to anything to deal with the structure, whether it's access or what can be built or how it's going to be built. Those folks are a tremendous resource.
Thank you. Okay, next. What is the process to request or initiate a formal constructability review for division and central managed projects?
Yeah, I think we answered that one.
Okay. All right, how does the PDN tie into the Atlas workbench?
So right now, I'll speak for Atlas. I think that Atlas has looked at changing their format a little bit to be more aligned with the PDN, but we're also just looking at ways to how we're going to better kind of document things, and so more to come on that. But I do think Atlas is looking at trying to reorganize the workbench to better align with the PDN.
Thank you. And then two more questions, but they're kind of the same. It says, would consultants be invited to participate in PM training?
And I touched on this a bit in my presentation, but the goal to start with would be to focus on DOT project managers, but we have discussed expanding and looking beyond that later on once we get our feet under us.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question, and this question is related to CMGC. How did the final dollars for cost compare to the estimate? I guess they may be talking about a project specifically.
Yeah, that's a tough one to answer because we do have multiple projects that are out there being delivered using CMGC. You know, how did the final cost compare to the estimate? I think you could ask that question about any project in our program, because if you go back to the original estimate, very few projects really end up coming in within our original project estimates. But you know, really CMGC, you know, it's really more of a function of, in that process, the contractor is providing a price, an independent cost estimator is evaluating what the project should cost, and then our own internal staff is developing an estimate. And I will say we've been successful for every CMGC project. With every work package we've had, we've been able to negotiate and come together on what we call a construction agreed price, and the projects have been able to move forward. So success there. Now, how that ties back to original estimate, that's a separate issue, separate question.
Thank you. Now, there were several other questions that came in that we didn't get a chance to answer. And so what I would say is, if you didn't get your question answered, you see who's up here, and we're going to have a nice long 30-minute break coming up. And all of these people will be glad to help you in any way they can. And so will me and the other speakers that you've heard from today. So with that, let's give this panel a nice round of thank you. The booths are going to be opened in, down the hall and across the hall. And so please be back here at 3:45 for our last session of the day. Thank you.
Now I get to relax and enjoy your conference. Oh, you're moderating? Gotcha. Good job, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, invite you to come on in and find your seats again. We'd like to get started here in just a moment. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, come on in and find your seats. We'd like to get started. Thank you.
Oh, I'm not going to say much. I'm really going to say Patrick will talk about the mega site pretty much.
Yeah, lessons learned.
Grab on and hold on tight.
Gonna try to push people in here so it'll be cool.
Okay. Does this thing have a touch screen? Nope.
If you haven't observed me earlier sessions, I'll come up and
All right, everybody, if y'all could come on in and take your seat. We want to go ahead and get started with the last session. So if I could get everybody's attention to please take your seat and quiet down so we can go ahead and get started. Just again want to welcome you to the last general session today. We've got 3 different topics on large project delivery. They're all actually pretty exciting projects that DOT's been working on for the last year or so. And so the first we'll have Patrick Norman, and he's going to be talking about the mega site down in Division 8 with lessons learned.
All right, thank you, Derek. I'll say thank you to Matt Clark for asking me to do this. It's kind of funny, we were talking about, well, we've had economic development projects going on in Division 8 for the last year and a half. We had 3 major wins, and I'll talk about those in a minute, but he asked me to come and talk about, well, what's it like to go through those types of pursuits, and then you can share some lessons learned, perhaps. And I said, well, I just learned a lesson. I should have kept more notes when we were going through it. So I'm going to try to share with you a little bit about kind of what to expect. Hopefully we get more of these as a state, so it'll be something that we can be prepared for. So first, just want to think about, when we're talking about major economic development projects, we have those of all shapes and sizes, right? We may build, as a department, we may work with an industry to build a turn lane or a small access road, but I'm really talking about the big ones that are bringing in hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, and then, you know, multiple hundreds of jobs, even sometimes multiple thousands of jobs. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And in each of those cases, we're going to have some semblance of DOT involvement of all scales. We got a couple that have $250,000 or $250 million in roadway improvements associated, a couple that are smaller scale, but I think you'll see us throughout the presentation, there's a lot of similarities, regardless of the size, on kind of what it takes for us to get to the finish line. So just a quick recap for everybody. As I mentioned, we've had the fortunate opportunity to be part of some of the biggest economic development pursuits or economic development wins in the state in the last year and a half. Just go through these real quick. I'm not going to read every detail of the slides, but you can see we started out in December of 21 at the Greensboro-Randolph mega site with the Toyota battery manufacturing plant. They had an initial announcement in December and then followed up in August of 22 with a significant number of investments and jobs. DOT's involvement there is not only roadway work, but it's kind of unique in the fact that we're actually managing the site grading process too, so a lot of work going into that. Triangle Innovation Point mega site in Chatham County. That's where the VinFast automobile manufacturing facility and battery plant's going. They announced in March of 2022, you can see there a $4 billion investment and over 7,500 jobs. That is coming in multiple phases, but the first OEM is the state, so that was a big deal for the state of North Carolina. So happy to have that in Chatham County. The following September in Chatham County as well, at the Chatham Advanced Manufacturing Site, just west of Siler City on 421, we had Wolfspeed. Wolfspeed is the single largest investment in the economic development world what North Carolina's ever seen at $5 billion. And just over 1,800 jobs, but they're going to build a semiconductor manufacturing facility there. And I put this fourth one on here, not because it's similar in scale or scope to those projects, but it's a huge project for the area that it's in. Scotland County is an economically distressed county, so 440 jobs and $85 million in investment in this location was huge for that area. Transformational from what their locals tell us. So it's a big deal there, but again, some of the same problems you have with the big projects you're going to have with a small project like that. So as you can see, a lot of work in a little less than a year. We already had, like every other division, we have a pretty substantial STEP program going on, a lot of complex projects with U.S. Opens and other things like that. So to add another, $500 million in projects to your portfolio that need to be delivered in an expedited fashion, it just adds a little extra stress to the workload. So I'll give kudos to the entire Division 8 team. They have stepped up. All of our industry partners have stepped up, and I think we're being pretty successful thus far. So, we could have looked at that as an obstacle. I try to be positive with my perspective, but I try to look at those as opportunities, right? We could have thrown our hands up and said, we can't do this, but, we took it head on, and I think through the process we've learned a ton, and I think it's better prepared us for the future as we move forward, and I think our industry partners would share the same sentiments. And so out of respect to the folks on the screen, we're still working through these projects with these different industries, so I'm not going to get into the details of each specific project and name names, just because I want to maintain those relationships. We've had some struggles with some, and some have been better than others, but I just want to maintain that good, respectful relationship. So I'm not going to mention any names as we move through it. So what to expect? So if you would have asked me in about June of 2021, about 3 months after I took this job, what are you going to do when Toyota comes knocking? That was my face. I'm like, I don't know. So you just kind of trial by fire. You have to learn it as you go. So there's no playbook for this. And so as I share this, just remember that, every project's different. Every project's going to have more or less details you got to work through. But if we can be a resource in Division 8 to try to answer some questions, we're happy to do that. And so again, we're talking about large projects. So what's going to happen when you go through that pursuit? Your initial contact for these large projects typically is going to come from Commerce and their economic development arm, which is the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina. So they have a lot of involvement. Local economic developers in some cases, whether it's your county or somebody else that's in the economic spectrum there, they may be reaching out to you. I got the hook early, didn't I? Yeah. So moving on, additionally, site owners, these folks that are trying to promote economic development, they own these thousands of acre sites, right? Sometimes they think they got a bigger fish on the line and they're not realistic, but they're going to approach you and say, hey, I got this deal coming and we need your help, right? Always run it back through Commerce and EDP&C. So they're the ones that are going to have the serious contenders, the serious projects. They're going to be able to provide you with the project worksheets that give you all the investment numbers, the jobs that they're going to create. And at the end of the day, they're going to be your arm to help negotiate with the legislature on potential incentive packages. Confidentiality is going to be a huge deal. You can expect to have to sign non-disclosure agreements, and it's imperative that you keep that confidentiality because a lot of these folks, they're competing with multiple states, or we're competing with multiple states. And so if we get something out in the press that's really in advance of their announcement decision, that can really put a bad taste in their mouth for North Carolina, and they may walk away, and we're going to lose a multi-billion-dollar investment. So we don't want that to happen. There's going to be a project code name. I've seen all kinds of project code names as my time in the chief engineer's office worked with these smaller projects, but just for an example, like Toyota, I think they were thinking about battery manufacturing as something, technologically advanced. So they were Project Darwin. VinFast was Project Blue, just because their primary color is blue, right? So there's no rhyme or reason. But there will be a code name, so just plan to use that. So you may or may not know who the company is going through this process. The level of preparation is going to be variable across the spectrum. So you would think that you have a big client coming in that's going to invest billions of dollars and create all these jobs. Well, they know what they want to do. Well, no, they don't. They know that they're looking for a site, and they have a proposed site plan that they want to put on this site, but they don't know the specifics about the site. They don't know the wetland features. They don't know all the jurisdictional features, right? So they're trying to figure out, well, how can I take my footprint that I want and fit it on this site? So that in itself provides some challenges for you because some of them are not very flexible on that site plan. We want this and we got to make it work. So those are things you have to work through. The site selection consultants, a lot of times you'll have companies that are representing these big industries that'll come out. Experienced site selection consultants can be very important and they are very helpful. We've seen kind of both ends of the spectrum on site selection consultants, and I think one way you can tell if they know what they're doing is, are they familiar with kind of the funding streams in North Carolina that are available to try to help support these projects, or are they actually familiar with some of the permitting processes and the time frame so they can speak realistically to their clients? So they're a very important piece of this, and they'll be a big piece in trying to help you sell this project in your area to the client. So you got to get them on your side. The EDP&C and Commerce representatives, they are varying levels of experience. You have some that have many, many years that are senior level. You have some that are pretty new, right? So a lot of times they don't know the questions to ask. They don't know what to ask you about, well, what roadway work do you need? How much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take to build? So all those conversations need to be had. And if you look at the EDPNC website, they have a multitude of representatives that are in all sectors of industry. So while you may not know who the potential client is, they should be able to give you some hints, but that individual is either going to work in the transportation space, or they're going to be maybe in the food space. They might be in the life sciences space, so you'll kind of know what potential industry you're dealing with. Two of ours have been transportation, obviously, so that's been clear there. The proposed site that you're dealing with, as I mentioned, these folks have a lot of different variables they're considering when they're trying to pick a site, and the site itself may be more developable ready or more ready to receive this big industry than others. There's probably multiple sites that play potentially within North Carolina, but definitely across the country that these folks are looking at. And typically they're going to go through a process, and they're going to whittle it down from 50 to 10 to that are really realistic, and then they're going to do site visits. You'll be involved with that, right, trying to sell the transportation network and the need there. And then they try to whittle it down to maybe 2 or 3, and hopefully when we're in that final 2 or 3, we can really show how we are above everybody else. But there's going to be different variables and different proposed sites, and so all of them are different. DOT even, obviously we have different situations in our mega site pursuits. We had one where the owners were very, they were diligent in trying to do their groundwork. They had proposed transportation improvement plans. They had things that were, speculative users, and they were prepared, right? They'd even talked about speculative permits, all that. We had others, they hadn't scratched the surface, right? So we were working from basically scratch to try to come up with a concept to help, develop the transportation needs, and I'll show you some more of that soon. Additionally, utilities are going to be a huge factor, right? So you got to have sewer, water, you have major power typically at these locations, your broadband, all those different things need to be there. So a lot of sites, some are ready, some are not. Some are going to require multiple years of utility improvements to get prepared, but that's something that some of these big industries are prepared to take on as these large sites become less and less available. And so encourage your local site owners and your economic developers to try to be judicious in spending some money to try to get prepared for these things, because it's only going to help you in the future. And if you're not familiar with the sites in your area, the North Carolina Commerce does have a certified sites group. I've been on that committee for the last 4 years, and there's various sites across the state. So if you want to look at kind of the things that might be going on in your area, the Certified Sites website's a good place to go, and you can see each one of those that's active. And that's a good program that you can get folks involved with, because it really makes them go through some due diligence and looking at environmental features and geotechnical information, utility extensions, all that stuff to kind of get them to where they're so-called site ready. And moving on, continuing with what to expect. You can expect this is going to be a very fast-paced pursuit. It's going to be fast and furious, and it's going to come in waves potentially in some projects. The time commitment is going to be significant. It may be spread over multiple months, or it might come over a period of weeks. Just kind of depends on what step in the process that client is. Of our projects, one of these took about 6 months to go from initial visit through final announcement. I was in Greensboro, I was in Raleigh, I was in Sanford and different places, just talking to these folks, and it took about 6 months and a lot of meetings in various locations. Another one was kind of on again, off again, and then they kind of disappeared. And then what I heard is one of their primary sites in another state disappeared, and they were like, well, this is our number 2, we got to jump, and we turned it around in about 30 days. So we spent a lot of time at EDP and C offices with these folks, meeting with them and going through the various steps in the process. The others were a little different. They were a little slower paced. One of them, we dealt more with the local economic developer and the owner directly versus EDP and C. EDP and C was kind of on the periphery, just kind of saying, hey, keep us updated what you need, and we'll go ask for it, right? But that's atypical, I would say. And then the other one was, I wish we would have been more involved. That was an interesting situation where EDP and C and the developer were both kind of catering to the legislature to say, well, this is what we need to make this happen. And none of them at any one time ever asked us, well, DOT, you're going to put $10 million into the road improvements. Do you need more? Is that enough, right? Nobody ever asked us that situation, so we got a major announcement, and everybody's like, well, okay, go build your project. Well, it would have been nice to have been at the table to say, well, we need a few million more dollars to try to help us facilitate this. But it is what it is. We're working through it. But try to be engaged at that as much as possible, and don't let them lose sight of the transportation need. Be ready to react to changes. Site plans are going to change frequently. As I mentioned, they're trying to fit this thing on a site that may not be ready for what they want to do, so they might have to make changes. Through the process, their development plans may change. They may increase job numbers. They may decrease job numbers, right? So we had one situation where they increased job numbers, but then they decided they were going to change their traffic flow through the site. So we had 2 interchanges pretty much designed, and they changed their traffic flow. What we thought was going to be a 90-10 split ended up being about a 50-50 split, and so we had to totally redesign an interchange. So those things will happen, so be prepared for those. Hopefully you can read that. This is just an example of one of the RFQs we got from one of the industries. This was one of the more fast-paced ones. So this talks about just a quick snapshot from the highway connections. You can read through that. But the basics of it is they were wanting 2 new roadway facilities, multi-lane divided roadway facilities to and from their site to the closest primary highway, right? So that was something that we got, and we had about a week to turn around not only a concept, but a cost estimate. And so that was really something that was a challenge for us. And I'll talk about our estimating tool in a minute, but we worked really closely with the Central Estimating Group, John Weathersby and his team, and gave us a lot of good information and things that we could share. You can see the rail portion there too. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into that. There's more than just highways involved with these. A lot of these industries have a heavy rail presence. I didn't include it here, but there's always also comments about ports and other staging areas for trucks and things like that that are really kind of expansive, that just beyond, division of a highway. So there's a lot of coordination that has to go on there too. Try not to learn lessons the hard way, but it seems like you don't learn the lessons till you go through it, but here we are. So I can't overstate how important schedule is. Schedule drives everything with your project, and you can expect that these projects are going to be desired on an accelerated schedule, and I mean short order, right? On the last slide I showed you, that conversation was being held in early 2022, and they wanted delivery of the project in Q2 of 2024. We hadn't started doing anything yet. We didn't have done preliminary engineering, permitting, so you can see it comes with challenges. So you got to be thinking about what can you do there to talk about phasing. What can you do to try to make sure you get them at least a temporary access point? You may be in conversations with them about, well, how am I going to route traffic during construction through the existing secondary network? So they may be relying heavily on you as a department to talk about how we get people to and from the site as we're building up. Luckily, most of these things, they don't have that 7,500 people there day one. They may have a few hundred, and then it ramps up over a period of months. But something they're going to be leaning heavily on the DOT to try to figure out how to get people in and out of. So identifying critical path items as you would with any other project is something that you need to do. Figure out what your problems are. Obviously, permitting, utilities, right-of-way, those are the typical things we deal with now. It's not uncommon in these two. It's the same type of problem, just something you got to do more quickly. And so touching on permits, that with all of these projects, that's something that's been of key, right? So these folks don't know what it takes to get a permit, right? Most of them haven't worked in North Carolina before, so there's a lot of work that goes into that. So getting to a permit type resolution early is important. You want to make sure that you get the stakeholders involved. Environmental Policy Unit, I'll give a shout out to Colin wherever he's at. He's in here somewhere. I think there was a period of time where when Colin saw my phone on his, or my name on his phone, he didn't want to answer it because he was like, well, what now, right? So get Colin and his team or whoever your rep is and EPU involved early. They have relationships with the agencies. They have relationships with other practitioners in the environmental space that can help you try to work through this process. But get all the stakeholders involved early on. Utilities, all the utility providers are important, not only the site owner, utilities, anything that touches this project or anything that makes this project complete is going to be part of that permitting package. A lot of the folks in the private industry have probably dealt with that on just normal site development, but in DOT, that's not something we deal with on the regular, right? So it's very key to try to get everybody involved. Engage with the agencies early. have those conversations. Again, trying to figure out what your permit type is going to be is extremely important. Ideally, we'd love to work under nationwide thresholds, but you can imagine a site that's typically big with the transportation improvements and all the utilities that have to be run. 99% of the time, we're going to exceed those nationwide thresholds. You can expect to go through the joint IP process, right? So it's going to take a significant amount of time. Communicate that early and often. And again, make sure your stakeholders are involved inside DOT and outside DOT. Something else that we've looked at, obviously, budgeting is another critical item. The notes here, right, be firm, but be realistic and include everything in one of our situations early on. This same client had looked at the site about 4 to 5 years earlier. There's some estimates that had been done. We hadn't done a whole lot of work to refine those estimates. This was really prior to all the inflationary factors hitting, but at the same time, things cost more over a period of years. And the thing turned around so fast that Commerce was asking us to, can you look at this estimate? Can you still do it for this? And we're like, I don't know. We don't have a full site plan. We don't know what we're building, right? We think we can. Well, can you do it for less, right? Well, I think not unless we eliminate an interchange or do something else. So there was a push in that one from what we understood, because I think we were looking for some success as a state. So we were probably trying to figure out, well, how can we get this thing delivered, right? So we might not have been completely honest with ourselves on cost. And I think we made some assumptions that Commerce Partners thought differently, right? We assumed they knew that our costs would have, we needed extra for right-of-way, we need extra for utilities, all that stuff. We had a huge cost for mitigation on this project, wasn't included in that. So at the end of the day, our incentive package turned out to be probably way lower than we wanted it to be. So as you can imagine, if you're going through a process trying to develop this site, and you got to go back to the legislature to ask for more money, it's not a pleasant conversation. So definitely something to be aware of. If you feel comfortable reducing your scope and your costs, do so, but otherwise stick to your guns. Identify key players from the client side. They're going to be critical in your pursuit, and then you need to stay engaged with them often. They're the people that are going to be at the table. They're going to be the people that are having the conversations with their leadership, trying to sell North Carolina back to their leadership. So you having a solid relationship with those folks, communicating with them early and often is going to be important. And once you win the project, those are probably going to be the same people that are still at the table as you're working through designs and things like that as they represent their company. So that's very important. Build a strong team around you. Just like every transportation project we delivered, you need a strong team. You need to understand what your important disciplines are. Put a strong team together around you to support you through the process, because it's going to be very, very helpful. Again, communication, can't overstress communication. You see the meme there. If you want what you expect, you need to be clear about what you expect, right? So it goes back to the conversation with Commerce. We weren't completely clear with what we expected on our cost, and so that was a misstep that we could have prevented. So be clear and be concise, but stand up for what you believe is right? Because I think at the end of the day, we'd love to win the project, but we don't want to sacrifice, our sanity and having to deal with those things because we weren't accurate. Document, extremely important. I made the joke about not having enough notes. I think we got a lot of notes on a lot of these projects, but that's going to be critical early on, especially when you're making foundational decisions. As I mentioned, site plans are going to change. The development priorities for this individual client might change, right? So document your decisions so you can go back and say, well, no, I'm doing what you asked me to do, because they're going to quickly point the finger back at you and say, well, you're not doing what we asked. So document. And of course, when you wrap this thing up, there are significant public dollars involved here. So they're probably going to be FOIA'd, Freedom of Information Act, right? So people are going to know, well, where did you spend those tax dollars? So good notes, good document keeping is going to be important. So this is just a quick snapshot of our estimating tool. I'll give some kudos to Reuben Blakely, our construction engineer in Division 8. He worked with John Weathersby on this, and once we kind of saw when we had to make that quick turnaround in about a week, we needed something to pull from to try to get cost in a quick manner. So Reuben put this together. This is a quick snapshot. It kind of gives you some information here. You see we put a lot of miscellaneous items, mobilization items, engineering inspections, permit coordination, right-of-way utilities, overhead indirect costs, those things that we're going to have to pay for, those BSIP charges that everybody tends to forget about, you still got to pay for that. And it all comes out of the same budget. So this is just a few examples of what what we put together on that. There's another, list of items down below there, whether it's a 2-lane access road, 4-lane access road, with curb and gutter, without curb and gutter. So these are pretty useful, and we're happy to share this with anybody if you want to take a look at it and if you need it in short order. It's very, very helpful. So what's your goal? I think it's close enough there. Like, you're not going to get a trophy for doing all this. I just couldn't pass up putting that meme on here. But win the prize. At the end of the day, it's our goal to promote economic development. So we want to make sure we get these projects to the finish line. Be honest, as I mentioned. Be confident. We don't want to put ourselves in a position of hardship by being unrealistic and overpromising. So our reputation goes a long way. We've built a strong reputation in the last year and a half, 2 years. We're the number one site or number one state for economic development. I think we've seen that with all the victories we've had. So we got a great reputation right now. We got a strong track record. So we want to make sure we keep that. And so being dishonest with these clients is not going to help that. Be confident in your communication. That's probably easier said than done. But when you're meeting with the clients and their site selectors, they want to feel like they can trust North Carolina as a team. Don't be afraid to put your saleswoman hat on. Try to sell your area. The transportation system is important, obviously. All those things that you can quantify, transportation, utilities, workforce, all those things are important, but just as important are the quality of life features that you have in your area. And sometimes even the EDP&C reps or commerce reps, hopefully your local economic developers know that, but sometimes it might be part of your opportunity to try to sell that too, whether it's recreation, whatever it might be, whatever you love about the area you live in, try to sell that, because those ancillary things are very, very important too. And so I think the projects are going to continue to come. They may not be at the pace that we've seen over the last few years, but if you keep up with the budget, the legislature is investing a lot of money in mega site readiness and mega site pursuits. So I've talked to a few legislative members, and I think there is some desire potentially for the state of North Carolina to get into the business of developing these mega sites and owning the property. So I think our involvement's only going to be more key, right? And so we're going to have more of these opportunities. Ruben and I got the opportunity to work with EDP&C on their mega site readiness program. They're studying 20 or so sites across the state, and we got to look at a lot of those. So they stretch from the western half of the state all the way to the eastern half of the state. So just be expecting that there's going to be more of this to come, so we want to make sure that we're prepared. So now what? Well, you've landed the big fish, you got it to the finish line. Well, now the actual work begins. All the fun announcements with the governor and the legislative leadership, all that's gone away, right? So now we're back to doing what we do best, right? Delivering transportation projects. All your other partners, you're going to find out real quick that, not to speak ill of anybody, but they're going to disappear, right? All those local economic developers and the folks who are pushing this thing to the finish line, well, all of a sudden, that's a DOT project. I have nothing to do with that, right? So, just as we're normally used to, right, we're the bad guys in a lot of situations. Right-of-way acquisition, we're dealing with it now on some of our projects. Why are you condemning property for a big private investor like this? They're bringing billions of dollars, but you're using tax dollars to condemn property, right? So it's controversial. So you're going to have issues with that. Your public backlash is going to be huge, right? We're dealing with it on all the projects, so it's going to be something you have to deal with every day. So now you got to follow through with meeting those milestones you promised. You got to get the permits in those time frames you promised. You got to deliver the plans. Get right-of-way utilities, and you got to get the construction done in the time frame you promised. So that's when we deliver on all the goods, right? That's when we make ourselves look good. So not going to be easy, not going to be without headaches, but I think at the end of the day, with our industry partners in the consulting world, obviously in the construction world, I think we'll be successful if we put our minds to it and just keep moving forward. And I think at the end of the day, the goal is we can all look back one day and say, well, I had part of that project, and it made a huge difference in that community. And I think at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So I think that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. That was really informative, and I'm pretty sure Patrick definitely wants the pace to slow down, at least in his division. So up next, we've got Drew Cox and Steve Kendall, and they're going to share some information about the I-95 projects down in Division 6. One other thing I just wanted to mention, we are going to be taking questions at the end, just like the last session. So if you've got questions, you can go ahead and start putting those in the Slido app, and then we'll do it at the end for all three. Thanks.
All right, so let's check your humor dictionary here. So the best economic development project name, code name that I have been involved with was Project More Cowbell. No lie. And they won the project. That was, and when we talked to the guys, I was like, for real, y'all named that after a SNL skit? Everybody loves Christopher Walken, so that's all I got to say. All right, so I-95. You know, I think back a long time ago before I had any idea what I wanted to do, and I remember faintly, I mean, as a tiny kid, we grew up in North Carolina, but close to the Myrtle Beach area, and I remember riding across the old swing bridge in Little River crossing the Intercoastal Waterway, and this new high-rise bridge that we're building for Highway 17 over the Intercoastal Waterway, and I thought that was so cool. And if you think about what we get to do every day, sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the drudgery of what we do, the schedules of what we do. Sometimes we feel like we're getting beat over the head with schedules or just anything else. It's pretty dang cool what we get to do every day. And hopefully in your career, you get to work on a signature project. Well, I can't claim that I was there at the beginning of this. My predecessor, Greg Burns, and Steve Kendall have been with this from the very beginning, but it is so cool to be involved with a project like Widening 95. So if you think about it, if you got kids, you've watched Cars the movie, Route 66, The American Spirit, New York to Miami. I mean, what other highway could inspire south of the border, right? I mean, 95 is a huge deal, and if you go back and look at it, from the time that the legislation was enacted in 1956 to create Interstate 95. North Carolina was underway with it. You had sections around Dunn and Benson, that area going from Division 6 up into Division 4 was completed. Some of it prior to 61, but we had about a 51-mile section completed by 1961, and also, surprisingly, down around the St. Paul's Lumberton area, we had a short section of 95 complete. And you could tell it was completed in the 50s and early 60s if you have all driven on it, and I'm sure you have. But, you know, we had that going on, and then in Kevin Bowen's second favorite state of New Jersey, the last section was completed in 2018. So you got a contiguous route from the main Canadian border down to Miami. It's close to 2,000 miles of highway. And we call it Main Street USA. And what is really cool about this thing is when you start to look at it, Interstate 95 has the ability to touch about a third of the U.S. population and up to about 40% of the gross domestic product in the U.S. that moves. So 95, in our mind, is a pretty big deal. You know, if you look at where we have been with 95, current condition, we're up to 72,000 vehicles per day in certain locations along 95. One of those being this flooded area in Lumberton that we had some major challenges with in Hurricanes Matthew and Florence. A heavy percent of trucks, going back to the freight issue, GDP, up to 13% trucks. I mean, that is a high volume of trucks. And if you've been on 95 in those narrow sections, where excluding paved shoulders, we had 24 feet of median with the numbers of trucks that we had on that facility, you had to pay attention. And, you know, we had a lot of resulting accidents with that. Dr. Hummer talked about a lot of those things a while ago. You had to pay attention on 95. And I'll tell you, I live in Whiteville. I've got 3 kids within a 5-mile radius up here, and they travel 95 a lot. And one of the last things I say is check the GPS to make sure that you don't have an accident out there, and quit fooling with the radio and pay attention to what you're doing when you're on 95. And you all know it if you've traveled 95. You have to pay attention to what you're doing there. In addition to that, short access ramps on and off the interstate, getting on and off a narrow interstate with a short ramp. Some of those ramps with access roads tied into them, so we got two-way traffic on the ramps. In the 50s, that's a superhighway, but now that's a problem. And so we've got those things along 95. You've got, in addition to that, low bridges. You know, we've gone through some projects to raise bridges on 95, and even with that, we went back and looked. In the last 18 months, we've had reported 18 bridge strikes. And I say reported because we get them where we didn't know we had them struck, and we come across them. So if you think about what that means, we've gotten very familiar with heat straightening and what that means for metal beams. When you close a lane on 75 or you close 2 lanes on 75, if you've been caught in it, you know a 5, 6, 7 mile backup can happen very quickly. It's just not a good place to be. And then the residual accidents that happen in those backups, we've had some pretty bad accidents with those. So a lot of challenges with the 95, and then in addition, we've got some flood-prone areas. And I will tell you, in Hurricanes Matthew and Florence, in 2016 with the first storm that came in, the local DOT, our local staff was distracted from response in Robeson County. I mean, we almost had a humanitarian crisis with the numbers of people that were stranded on the interstate. So if you think, close the interstate at the last interchange before you have flood. I mean, that's what our policy has always been. The numbers of people that we had stuck in Lumberton with no gas, no food, no water, no restrooms, no place to stay, nowhere to go. I mean, it took away from the response that we had. And thank goodness when we repeated that whole process in 2018, when we had this flooding with our second storm in 2 years, we were able to get support from the chief's office and STOC. We worked with Virginia and South Carolina to detour traffic out of the state, and it made a major difference. But the bottom line is, when we had the opportunity to come in and do work on 95, it was something we definitely wanted to try to address. Construction on 95, if you've not driven on 95, please come visit. We've got 54 miles of I-95 under construction at this point. We're going from I-40 down to just south of 95 Business in Fayetteville, and then from Hope Mills just south of Fayetteville down to I-74 in Robeson County. That's widened into 8 lanes. And thank goodness we're going to be in a situation where the first project that was let from mile marker 55 up to 71, which is south of Dunn, that'll be completed in 2025. The remaining part of that will be completed in 2026. And I think you'll see a major difference. I think everybody that's ridden south of Raleigh on I-40 now can tell you that 8 lanes is a whole lot better than 2 or 10. And so we think we're going to see the same thing with I-95 as well. We are doing resiliency improvements to these 4 areas that are flood prone. That is going to be, I think, a major improvement when we get into emergency response and just moving people and goods. As a matter of fact, the Black River, Mingo Swamp between Fayetteville and Dunn, we're raising that bridge 7 feet. The Lumber River, if you can believe this, in an urban area, the Lumber River Bridge will be 13 feet higher than it is today. Constructability. That's a challenge on that project. It's a major challenge, but I think it's a worthwhile effort to get where we need to be. One of the interesting things that we're doing, and this is in conjunction with STOC and their support, we're doing tow contracts for quick clearance of accidents on 95. So if you can imagine, it's tough driving on 95 before we do construction. When we do construction, we've got tow contracts enacted so we can quick clear and move accidents to try to keep people moving. A lot of things that we did ahead of time with these projects to go ahead and prep detour routes for times that we knew we were going to have detours. We did a lot of improvements ahead of these projects being let so we can make sure that we keep people moving and try to keep people as safe as we can keep them during the construction of the project. All right, so accelerated delivery. Glenda's talking earlier about we're trying to move quicker and we're losing quality. So the goal that we have is we want to do things quicker and we want to do them better all at the same time. So we're kind of like the greedy kid, right? So we want to deliver these projects, and I will tell you, without getting a whole lot of detail, we had some interchange projects we're moving on here that we were working on the design, but once we got these projects committed, from the time that these projects were committed to the time that we had them let, we're looking at about a 4-year period. So you think about the normal process that we have for delivery, and I can tell you this man here, Steve Kendall, he is a lot of fun to work with. He was under a lot of stress, he and his team. You think about what a division manages day in, day out. the amount of projects that we're doing and how we do things, and then you throw this in their lap on top of that, it was a major, major undertaking. So, you know, the thing that I think was important for us from the very beginning is we partnered with a PEF or a firm to come along beside us to help us manage the projects along this corridor. And that was absolutely critical, and we have been hand in hand, a tight partnership from the very beginning on this, and I think it's one of the reasons that we've had success on this project, and I just want to underscore how critical that was. So if you get into a situation where you're seeing the opportunity to chase projects like this, that was good for us. So it was aside from the firms that we pulled alongside to help with design and the other aspects of the projects, we had a firm to help us manage the projects. That was something that was real important to this process. The other thing that was done is we identified a project critical path, and then we started to look at what we needed to do to shift resources to tackle that critical path. So, you know, we're looking to make sure we're trying to cover everything, but the things that were critical to project delivery, those things were focused on, and then actually looked at areas where timelines could be compressed on that. So the whole time, delivery is at the forefront of what we're doing. One of the things that just was amazing to me as a division maintenance engineer when this process started, our division staff, along with our partner firm that was helping us manage the projects, they were pulling design teams in. They were having monthly, I call them marathon meetings. I know every time I came by, it was like, it's like, is there a poker match going on in there? Because the door was shut, it was packed. When break would happen, it would be like 50 people were coming out of the room. They locked themselves in a room and they worked out details, and I think that's great because when we had issues, it wasn't that you had to pick up a phone, send an email, do a Teams meeting. You were there across the table from each other. They were working it out, hammering out the details. And y'all know as well as I do, meetings like that every month on your calendar can start to become a drag. These folks were committed to the process and what they were doing, and they stuck with it, and I think that's one of the reasons that we turned out some really good work in what we did with these projects. I know we're moving towards this now, but the documents for this, we got them in 12 months. Our environmental folks were just amazing with that. Two things that we did that really helped this process is we got approval to perform early acquisition of right-of-way for total takes and relocations, and we also got permission to begin doing clearing ahead of utilities. Again, it's what can we do to make the path straight to deliver the project? We went out and cleared a bunch of trees. We got things in order so that when utility companies came, they had no excuse. They had a clear path to go. Project challenges. You know, there's no way to deliver projects like this without challenges. And we've had our fair share on this. And I think that's okay. It's all opportunities to grow. So one of the challenges, I said we communicated well, but that was a challenge, was communication. There's no way to handle a schedule like this and look at the number of contributing members that we had, team members that we had on this, and not expect that we're going to have challenges with communication. And the thing I would tell you with something like this is just something that our folks and the team members that we've been working with on this have just got after it. I mean, they have stuck with it, you know, and I don't think we've had situations pop up where somebody missed something that you have people pointing a finger saying, hey, you did this wrong, why aren't you doing this? Everybody had a spirit of trying to help one another with this. And again, I think that's why we've been able to count on each other and know that we had each other's back. And again, the ultimate goal was we get to work on a very cool project. So that's been a challenge, but it's been something I think that's been a positive. Information management. No way to handle the kind of volume of work on this that we've handled without having organization in what we're doing. And again, I'm going to go back to our division team and the firm that we pulled alongside to help us manage the projects along this corridor. Were key in helping us keep things organized, helping us have some sanity while this was going on. You got to manage your information when you're doing something this large. It's got to be organized. It's got to be where you can put a quick hand on it. Because I can tell you, there's time and time again that I saw these guys going back to things to deal with things that had happened, or hey, we had an answer to that. What was that information? we've run into things on this project that just make you scratch your head sometimes, but our folks have always been able to find answers in where we had gone through and worked through problems, and we've been able to address some of those questions that came up because they had a good organization to what they were managing. Glenda talked about this earlier, design reviews. And what I will tell you on this is, I know as a department, we're counting on you folks as firms that we're working with to give us designs that we can take and go with. But at the same time, we know that we got a responsibility to review what's going on. When you're looking at a compressed schedule, look, I was a district engineer. I worked in the combined district resident engineer's office for a long time. We would have plans come in, and it's like you were having to force yourself to sit down and do a detailed review of those plans. But I can tell you, every time you did, it was money. And all I will tell you on a project like this or projects like these is you have to review and sit them down and come back to them and review again. If you do a PowerPoint like this, you're going to sit it down and come back to it and look at it 2 or 3 times. These project plans, you've got to review and review and review again. And you got to commit to spending time to review these things because it is so easy to miss small design elements in these things that have big consequences on the back end. And what I will tell you all, I don't know how many of you here have worked on the maintenance side of the house with anything. We get some big budgets to build projects. GMR is a tiny little fraction of what we do. There is not opportunity to correct mistakes on this. When we accept a project and 3 years later we find a problem, it is a massive undertaking to go find money to address that. You do not have money in your budget. So the deal is we get one time to get it right. And that's why it's under construction or under design or whatever. And so I just will go back and underscore that again and again and again. Review and review and re-review and take your time to do that. And this is not a finger-pointing issue. It's a we're on the same team issue, and we got to have each other's back when we're doing projects of this magnitude because I will tell you, you're going to find issues. We just have to make sure we're looking out for each other because at the end of the day, there's this word that has been fresh for me lately called liability, and we all are in the same boat with this. To me, at the end of the day, the big deal with this is we want to deliver the best project we can. 95 is a signature project to me. I want this to be the best it can possibly be. And I think that's what our team wants to see. And so that's the way we're trying to approach this as a team. But I'm just telling you guys, review, and when you think you're done with it, review it again. Project management. Again, I want to take a minute just to tip my hat to Steve and his team and what we're doing in-house. Any of these division engineers can tell you the several hundred projects that we're managing in the divisions. We welcome the opportunity to do what we're doing. I think it's an incredible opportunity to have responsibility and to do what we get the chance to do in the divisions. But it's a lot, and these folks do a tremendous job managing what we do. Steve and his team have done a tremendous job on this 95 project, and I'm just excited to say that that we're under construction, and it's every time I ride 95, it's almost like a kid at Christmas. You see something that's been done, and it's just exciting. Key takeaways. Key takeaways here. I'm going to throw this back, and he said, "Don't mention my name," but I am. My predecessor, Greg Burns. I learned this from him a long time ago. Greg would ask you why until he would run you out of answers. And you would think you knew more than Greg knew about something. And he would ask you why until you would be out of answers. And that's one thing I saw on this project. When we started looking at this and I started listening to what was going on when these things were first being developed, the question why was that, why can't we do this? Why do we have to do it that way? Why can't we consider this as a method for delivering this project? And they would ask that question until they exhausted the answers. And the net result of that is I think we saw some things get out of the box, and we started to look at ways that we could accelerate this project but deliver it as a quality project. And so that's one thing that I would challenge you to do that we've learned out of this is when you stop taking the status quo as the answer and start asking why in the world can't we consider a better way to do something, There's great opportunities there, and we've realized them on this project. The second thing, and this is key, and I've said this a long time, we've seen a benefit from this. I've watched Steve Kendall go out on the job on I-95 and meet with the resident engineers and the contractors, and he's getting positive takeaway from that as a design engineer. The project managers that report to Steve are doing the same thing, but I want to tell you, on the flip side of the coin, y'all know this, and if you've worked in a resident's office, and if you've been in here and you were a resident engineer, you know the residents get a little prejudiced sometimes about their design, saying, what in the world was that designer thinking? Well, there's been some positive takeaways for our residents too. Our project managers have been able to have the opportunity to explain, well, this is why we looked at it that way. Bottom line with that is our project managers and our resident engineers have both gained value from those experiences. So our staff, we're encouraging them to go out on projects regularly. We want them out. We want them there at the beginning. We want them looking at right-of-way and utility issues. We want them looking at what the residents are dealing with on constructability issues, on traffic control issues. And I will tell you this, when the project is over, it doesn't end. As a project manager, you ought to be setting a time with the county maintenance engineer to go out a year or two after the project's done and say, hey, I designed this project. Would you mind if I come out and take a look at it with you? Do you have a half a day you can spend with me? Get out and ride your project. Because I bet a lot of you in here are designers that have not had the opportunity to be in the field a lot. And there's so much that you can gain. But I'm going to tell you, there's a lot that our folks in the field can gain from the knowledge that you have. So I would just encourage you to do that. I've watched our guys as they've got out and do this more and more. I think it's something they enjoy. I think it's something they look forward to. And I think you'll gain a lot from it. But that is one thing that we're really trying to push and encourage in our division. Good communication and organization are the foundation of any project like this in delivery. I think I've underscored that. And then finally, I want to say this. We're all a team. There's no way we could do what we're doing without you all. There's no way that this project could be delivered to the state of North Carolina without us as a group coming together and working as a team to deliver this. I think it's a pretty neat collaboration. It's amazing when you can get so many different people with so many different backgrounds, working really with so many different firms that pull together to deliver something like this. And I think it says a lot about the great state this is and why so many people want to be here. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to come up and brag on our folks a little bit and what we're doing, and I hope you'll get to ride on the I-95 that's a whole lot safer here in the near future. Thanks.
Thank you, Drew. That was great, and I can attest to the whole team thing because I was able to work on that project a little bit, and they really did a really good job of pulling everybody together, and it was definitely one of those projects where you've got to solve problems all the time. But next up, we've saved what Brian would probably say the best for last, but Brian Kettner is going to talk about the project, CMGC project in Division 7.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my counterparts over here ran a little long, so I'm the only thing standing between you and the beverages in the other room. So we'll try to speed this up. But what we're presenting on today is the CMGC project, alternative project delivery method for the Boom Supersonic Economic Development Project at the PTI Airport in Greensboro. So this is my project mission statement, and hopefully, as you see, once we get into the schedule, you'll understand, make the impossible possible. I just want to show a quick little video here of what we get to be a part of with Boom Supersonic. Has anybody in here seen the new Top Gun movie, by show of hands? All right, so he's going Mach 10 in that thing, and this video just kind of makes me feel like that, like I'm just ready to, kick the door down once I watch it. So let's take a look at it.
It's about time. Time to turn the past into the present. Time to create the world's fastest airliner optimized for speed, safety, and sustainability. Time to make flying, flying. Meet the refined design. Overture. Sculpted for speed and safety. Engineered for a sustainable future. It's about time to enter a new era of supersonic travel. Time to turn the future into the present. It's about time. Boom. Supersonic.
I think that's a pretty cool video. I bet the aviation guys are geeking out right now, but I don't know. So last year at the pre-construction conference, which was held in January, my division engineer, he actually left early and went to the airport, and they announced that they were selecting the site at the airport. So once we got that news, he came back and said, "I got an opportunity for you." Well, we all know what that means, more work, right? So in the economic development, the House Bill 77, there was $35 million allocated to the roadway portion of this project. On the flip side of that was the airport had developed a process or a concept that was about a $70 million concept. All to say, we haven't even started this thing. We didn't know anything about this project, and then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, we need to have the road open by Q1 of 2024. So we scrambled around and gathered up based on relationships and teams, and we had a kickoff meeting on February 4th of 2022. We had division staff, technical units, PTIA and their consultants. We had RPES and natural environment subs, location surveys, and the Army Corps of Engineers. Oh, and by the way, if anybody knows Dave Langston, he's our regional surveyor engineer. If you need anything done, that man is a cookie monster. All you need to do is just bring him some cookies. He will get whatever done. So I asked him if he was going to be here today, and he's like, "Are there cookies?" And I'm like, "Yeah, there's going to be some cookies." So we started, design and surveys were off to the races. Everything, the schedule was ASAP. In June of 2022, we had selected a contractor through the CMGC process. Thanks to Dave and Jess and Priority Projects for walking us through that process, for the letters of interest and walking us through the proposal and the selection of all that. We were able to execute our first work package in September of 22 to the contractor. So a little bit about the CMG process and its contractual and working relationships. DOT still is the hub of the project. Unlike design build, where the firm works for the contractor and then they're delivering something to the client, we are the hub. We have the PEF working for us under contract. The contractor is selected, and they are working with us initially as a pre-construction person to bring that constructability to it. And then we also have an independent construction estimator, the ICE. And so our PEF, our prime was Mott McDonald. Our ICE was H&TB, and our contractor was Thompson Arthur Smith Road Joint Venture. And so the benefit that we saw in talking to the firm and talking to the contractor, unlike design build where everything's a change order, it was up to DOT to assign that priority and to focus on the goals and have a more collaborative atmosphere. The contractor was able to give us input on the design, and we were all working towards that common goal, which was nice. So communication, you've heard it from every presentation today. If my division engineer was up here, he would talk about it over and over again, so I can't go without saying it. On that kickoff meeting, we had probably 50 people that joined in last minute. They kind of dropped everything that they had on their schedule. And we established that this is Division 7 priority number 1. It's on the governor's radar. It's on the secretary's radar. We need to make this happen. So in that, we had weekly progress meetings every Friday morning, 9 a.m. We gave design updates, deliverable updates, and time frames, and then action items for accountability. And those were assigned and assigned to a specific person with a specific timeline. And then on the following meeting, that's the first thing we talked about is, all right, so-and-so, did you get that done? Yes or no, and here's why. Quantity and price reconciliation meetings for our work packages. This kind of goes back to what Boyd was talking about. It's open, clear-cut pricing. So there's a quantity that's established. Everybody agrees on it. You know, the DOT folks, the contractor, and the independent construction estimator, they all come together and they agree on the quantity. They go back out, they assign their price, they open up the prices, and then they kind of do their magic and meet in the middle. So that helps for just open pricing. There is on CMGC, there is a fixed markup, so they are guaranteed a certain profit on top of the agreed to price, but that's kind of worked out to the selection process. Relationships. We had over 10 PEFs working on this project, from geotech folks to environmental folks, surveys, roadway design, PES, GECs, and also the consultants working for the airport. NCDOT staff and division and central units, and also the client essentially is PTIA. So as you can see, this is the concept map that was delivered to us by the airport. Doesn't show. So on the north side, you have, in the blue, there is roadway network, and over on the right-hand side, there is a bridge over a conservation easement. Down here in the bottom right is where the boom site is proposed to be. Also, along this, the airport wanted to minimize the right-of-way impacts because they have all these future developments that they're trying to maximize the space. They have this saying that they want to be this, they want to take over the world, essentially. It's kind of like Pinky and the Brain in the Greensboro area. And they believe it, true. We also have Bridge 1 on the left-hand side of your screen that was proposed. And so, as I stated earlier, the problem is that there was a $75 million scope with a $35 million budget. So some of the issues that we had was environmental constraints. We had the jurisdictional streams. We also had conservation easements that we talked about. Right-of-way, they desired to minimize the right-of-way, so they had proposed MSE walls in every location possible. We had the existing interstates, I-73, and then the taxiway bridge, which is that little hash mark there. Is Boom, with their oversized loads, actually have to go down and under the taxiway and back up. And then there's also the consideration for future development within the PTIA airport, which is in every parcel. And as Patrick, noted that there's constantly evolving, issues. As we just got developed, this one, Marshall has now announced, and they're official just on the other side of where Boom is going to be. And so now we are tasked with just another project within that area with the same type of time frame. So the team and I, and working with the airport, we had to really define what the purpose and need and the true need of the access was. And so with that, we were able to eliminate 3 structures. We were able to tie to existing grades and, kind of grade into where our roadway was with the existing, where they were planning to cut down for the future development. Where there was a Bridge 1 over here in the corner, we were able to, instead of a bridge, we were able to do a pipe culvert extension. And since we had a full avoidance alternative coming from the north, crossing over I-73 and back under the taxiway, the Corps was at our meeting and they said that they would not issue us a permit to have any jurisdictional impacts. So with that, we significantly pared this thing down to what we thought was reasonable, but we had to get buy-in from the airport, and we were able to do that. So CMGC benefits and innovation. The phase design, I would say in every aspect, and I'll get into details, what was the major benefit. We were able to phase the environmental impacts. Our folks at Three Oaks was able to go out and phase the different survey windows for the different features and tell us where we could grade and where we couldn't grade as we were trying to finalize our document. We were able to focus on priority geotechnical borings for the retaining walls and the structures, as indicated by the contractor, because those were critical path items. We needed to get the bridge design, and we needed to get those MSE walls, the envelopes done and the walls ordered. We also were able to identify a borrow site on the airport. Like, as I mentioned, they were out there constantly cutting grade, and they had an excess of material. Well, happens for us. We had a big hole to put it in, so we used their 350,000 yards of dirt to put it in, and so that it was a win-win for the department and a win-win for the airport. Structures. So as I mentioned, there was initially 5 structures proposed on this project. We eliminated 3 of those, and prior to the contractor being on board and being selected, we had to make some assumptions based on what could we build faster, what could we build cheaper. And so we moved forward with just some concepts of, do we want to do a 3-span box beam bridge, or do we want to do a single span cast in place deck over that stream that I talked about that we had to avoid. Girder design, we completed that early because the contractor, they notated that was going to be a long lead material time, about 6 months. Another benefit was they designed a girder that would work from a design standpoint, but when they sent it off to the manufacturer, there were some issues with the rebar and the fastening, so if that would have been a typical bid build project, that would have been an issue right out the gate. So we were able to mitigate that and change the design and go ahead and get a work package issued for this. As I mentioned earlier about the MSE walls, we were able to get the MSE walls located and get the envelopes generated. Therefore, we could let a package and the contractor could go ahead and order the MSE walls and the design. Let's see. So we also designed and approved the substructure and the superstructure in phases, as noted by the contractor. They had specific areas they wanted to focus on, so we gave them the substructure of one, gave them the substructure of the other, moved to the superstructure, and vice versa. SMU, our partners in SMU, committed to a 5-day plan review, and all that goes back to communications. A lot of communications with structures and a lot of communications with geotech to get these compressed review times. Work zone traffic control, as you guys know, if you've done a lot of work zone traffic control or you've been in construction, you have some engineers sitting in an office that's trying to take a best guess at what the contractor's wanting to do. But at the end of the day, they're going to do what they want to do and how they want to do it. So this enabled us to collaborate with them and say, okay, where do you want to focus your efforts, and how can we get you the plans and the quantities so you can start building in these locations? And that was a huge benefit. Utilities obviously is a big issue on most projects. Luckily for us, we had minimal utilities. We did have some utilities along Regional Road coming off the existing road onto new location. We were able to kind of shift our alignment to avoid some water lines and some hydrant relocations. And then Duke, all they needed to do is just raise the poles. So we were able to coordinate with that. On the other side of I-73, we had some conflicts with some overhead messaging power and some things like that and some fiber. So as we were working on the south side of the project, Duke and others were able to go and move those utilities. So hydraulics. So a contractor was able to review the red line drainage plans, and they were identified some long lead time materials. There was some pretty big pipes in this drainage network, and so we were able to let a work package early for the certain types of pipe and the boxes that we needed, because those were 4 to 6 month lead times. The contractor also noted that there was one pipe that was spec'd out that was about a 6 month lead time, but he had an additional pipe size on the yard that we were able to swap out and make some adjustments to the drainage so that we could eliminate that 6-month lead time on that pipe. And that pipe was very critical. It was the pipe extension that we were going to actually put a bridge initially, and so we had to extend that pipe in order to get access to the remaining sites. Boyd talked about risk, and the one thing about risk on this project was, and with CMGC projects, is in my opinion, it takes the risk off of the contractor for the most part, because you're identifying the risk as you're going through your price reconciliation. You're assigning it a cost or a schedule delay, depending on what those are. A lot of ours was related to airport. Borrow material was constantly shifting the sources and the number or the quantities. Also, the grading of the site plan, because the site plan for the boom project was shifting constantly. Tie-ins. They wanted us to have everything nailed down like yesterday, but they still haven't nailed down their driveways. So schedule. So the road, like I said, stated earlier, the road to Boom, they want it open by Q1 of 2024. Some of the challenges and lessons learned was we didn't have the information that we needed. It was just kind of like go and get it. So we did obtain a lot more surveys than what we needed to initially. Like I said, our folks in locations were able to fly, and with some help of some cookies, they were able to get the final surveys within 6 weeks. Another lesson learned that every deliverable was due ASAP. And ASAP was fine until ASAP wasn't fine. So midsummer, we were like, we need that like yesterday. And they're like, yeah, we understand. So we started trying to assign deadlines and assign priorities. And so, switching from everything was due yesterday to like, okay, this is what we really need in this order was really a game changer in how we really could hold people accountable on their deliverables. Like I stated earlier, we did progress the design as far as we could prior to the contractor coming on board. We did make some assumptions. We did have to go back and make some revisions to the design based on their input. But ultimately, it saved the department time and money based on their input. So for the budget, like I said, we were allocated $35 million to the road improvements for this project. Originally, Kelsey Balance was like, well, how do you want to split this up? And I'm just like, I don't know. Let's do 3.5 on PE, $1 million on right-of-way, 500 on utilities, and 30 on construction. And so what our actual numbers look like is 3.1 on the PE. That's our surveying, our engineering, everything out the door. We were actually fortunate enough that PTIA owned all the property that we were impacting. So just with a right-of-way agreement, we just were able to get that right-of-way from them at no cost. And utilities was about $100,000, and it was pretty minimal considering. Our construction estimate right now is right around $31.8 million. Some other project challenges. There was a lot of moving parts in this area. As you can see on the left-hand side of the screen in that picture, that's the site that Boom is starting to grade. They're actively working on building their facility. They have a really aggressive schedule. They also ask us every week when our road's going to be done, and we're like, well, when's your building going to be done? Like, well, how's progress going? Well, look out there, we're rolling. Obviously we're building our road, and then the airport has several other contracts, removing dirt, grading, and things that are in conflict. As I mentioned before, the material locations and types changed. At one point, we had a borrow site just on the north side that was a short haul of about 100,000 yards. Then that site moved to the farthest away, so it increased our haul time and increased our haul cost. And so therefore, we had to adjust adjust that in our cost. Hit on it again, communication is key. The biggest reason I think we were successful so far in this project is all the folks that you see listed here, the contractor, the PEF, the ICE, the reviewers, the stakeholders, all recognize that this project was our number one priority. We kept stressing that to them. And the thing from a project delivery standpoint that I really enjoyed was the kind of the push-pull, between the different parties. I would have the contractor call me and say, I really got to have this. I needed that yesterday. The firm's like, there's no way I can get that done. And so trying to figure out exactly what really needed to be done. And so those phased approaches of design really lended to be successful. And, I know I had conversations with the firms, and they really appreciated the kind of the keeping the tension off of them per se, and just letting me be in the middle. And then on the flip side, the contractor admitting that he knows he's going to ask for the world in hopes that he's going to get something less. But that's his job, to protect the interest of his company, because at the end of the day, he's going to be the one on the back end not meeting the schedule if he doesn't meet it. So, what I kind of attributed this to is like in the famous words of Mick Jagger, you can't always get what you want, but you get what we need. And I remember as a kid, my stepdad would always say that first part, but he never finished it. So, I don't know. So where are we now? Final design on all disciplines have been complete. So we're, 16 months in, and our designs are complete. 5 work packages have been executed for construction, totaling $30.9 million. Our total funding was $35 million, and our current budget was $34.5 million. The contractor is set to be complete of the whole project of December 23, and talking with some folks in Raleigh, this project would have been normally would have been an additional 18 months of construction window from a typical design bid build, in addition to a couple more years of design. So these are just some pictures of the progress, aerial photography from drone footage from, I think, 2 weeks ago. So this is coming off new location, coming around. So we're on grade, we're paved. We've got our curb line in. We've got it paved up to the bridge site. As of 2 weeks ago, they're already flipped over here, and they're working on this indent. The indent far across there is the forms have been wrecked, and we're moving on. The MSE wall and the reinforced approach fluid on the south side is complete. The one on the north side is almost to the top of the coping as of yesterday when I drove through there. This is kind of an aerial looking back towards the boom site. Our road goes under that tunnel in the taxiway. So it's about on grade, and we're laying pipe. Where the gravel is your future boom site. And then there's the end of the project, kind of a cul-de-sacing into where the boom road ends, essentially. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Brian. All of those are really cool, awesome projects, and I think the theme of the day is definitely, communication, teamwork is what it takes to get stuff done. So can we give all these presenters another round of applause? Because we're actually pretty far over time, we only had a couple of questions, so we're going to skip the questions. If you do have a question, please reach out. They'd be happy to answer whatever. Just a couple of announcements as we kind of move. The reception is coming up next, and it's going to be in room 2. But we've also been told, because it's kind of crowded in there, that we can move out into the lobby with drinks and food, but please stick to just the lobby and room 2. Do not come down the halls or anything like that, if you would. Also wanted to mention that there is breakfast tomorrow from 7:30 to 8:30 back in this room. So make sure you get here early to be able to get breakfast. It's a seated breakfast, so it'll not a continental breakfast. And then also did want to just thank our sponsors, Atkins, DRMP, Gannett Fleming, McAdams, STV, and ACEC. They're the reason that you are going to have a reception tonight. So please, if you see one of those folks, thank them. And I do really thank you all for coming today, and look forward to y'all being here tomorrow. We'll have a lot of really great sessions. So make sure you look at the agenda and kind of look and see what you want to do. And we'll see you in the morning, but please feel free to go ahead and head back to room 2. Thanks, everybody.